I think this is the last of this function this year. December, we normally take a break. But there's some work that I've been doing with the European Investment Bank and the World Bank. There's a lot of money around private sector support. Lots of money around private sector support. But the problem has been that we are not generating lots of businesses that can be supportable. And I want to begin next year maybe to bring some of these people here to say what exactly they need to see for you to be supported. There are also a number of VCs out of Europe. They want to do something. But one thing I must tell you, and what I see most people, when people come to see me, because when we finish here, some people come to my office and they say, that was very good. I actually need a venture capitalist. And I say, what is the product? It's in my head. Nobody would ever fund you on an idea that is in your head. You actually must go out and do something. And there are so many things that you could do so that you can get the necessary support. So I don't know what to do, how to do it, to push most of you to begin to move beyond the idea in your head, develop the product, and then out of that, we can now talk to those VCs that are looking for new ideas, new disruptions. And there are so many disruptions. Just now we've been talking about people want to disrupt insurance, but this has been talk for the past 4 years. We said, okay, the financial sector is being disrupted. We only scratched the surface on financial sector. We haven't quite fully disrupted the sector. You see what is happening now after the capping of interest rates. Employment is being, we are seeing most banks now shedding off employment in this part, shifting it to India. Standard, for example, has moved some of their IT work to India. I'm saying this because I want to set the tone for next year. I think we need to explore or get experts to explore new ideas and be more proactive in trying to do some of the things that we need to do in order to exploit emerging opportunities in the ICT sector. Personally, I'm not satisfied that we have done enough to bring disruption. Disruption in the transport sector is overdue. Disruption in the insurance sector is overdue. There is so much that can be done. And those of you who are non-techie, there are several things that can be done. So I would hope that next year we would have more experts. We are beginning today. We have a legal expert, very important that we have people like, I don't know, Reba or Reba, I don't know, you pronounce Reba? Reba. Reba. And I don't know whether it's the Chabeda I know, but the what? I know Chabeda the one who used to be at Kenya Bureau of Standards? The cousin. Okay. So I know the family. Wonderful CV of our speaker today. Lawyer by training, certified public accountant. You know, you don't get this combination. Somebody who understands business and then understands the legal aspects. Many of the problems that SMEs face, and I would hope most of you read the SME survey. that came out last month. They face so many problems, and most don't understand the legal aspect. And if you have read recently, even Kenya Revenue Authority, they are coming for taxes in different ways. So you must be legal from day one, because there are benefits to being legal. So we have asked Reba today to take us through, and then we can continue from there. Karibu, Reba. Here is the word. Oh, you are.
Drink the one I was already drinking. Morning. Great. Thank you for coming, despite the weather. Hi. Okay. I'm glad to be here to just talk to you about some of the issues. And I just want to preempt that we cannot talk about everything legal today. But in case you have any questions, feel free to ask as we go along. This is just sort of a teaser. I was happy to be invited by Professor Ndemo to just talk to you about some of the basic issues. But feel free, as I said, to ask as we go along, and even after the session, you can come to me or email me. I'll be fine. So just to start us off, my name is Reba, as you've been told. I'm a partner at Umsizi LLP, and Umsizi LLP is pretty much a law firm. I know you don't hear many law firms without the many names, but now we have new forms of partnerships, so we'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about different vehicles that you can use to run businesses. So Umsizi LLP was born in 2014. I partner with my friend Jackie. Sorry, I just saw somebody ruining my computer. Sorry, so I was saying that I partner with Jackie. Jackie and myself are partners. We started up in 2014. We have many years of experience in the corporate sector, so that gives us an advantage in terms of being able to advise people, especially in the corporate and commercial sectors. If you have a look at our website, you'll see everything about us. That's www.umsizi.co.ke. So I'll let you look at that. Now, what we mainly do is legal advisory, corporate and commercial work, issues around governance, and we also touch on issues of alternative dispute resolution. So if you want more about that, we can talk about that, but that's not our major agenda for today. Today, I just want to talk to you about what are the basic things when you are starting up, and as you start operating, what are the things that you need to be looking out for? Hopefully, by the end of this session, we will be able to identify what options are available to us when we are starting up. We'll be able to identify the basic legal and operational needs of a new organization or company or unit, whatever it is that you're going to set up. And then we're going to understand the basic tax and regulatory obligations for a company or an organization for that matter, because I don't want to assume everybody will start up a company. Then we will also try and figure out what is intellectual property and how we are going to interact with it in our various startups. Yeah? So just before we start, I wanted us to view a short video. Okay, it's not so short, it's maybe about 5 minutes.
Hey, I still want to have a conversation on business, and thank you for watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If your friend hasn't, tell her to, tell him to. Thank you. I want to talk business and young people, and it's a continuation on my conversation on local contractors, whether they're doing roads or houses, who don't get it and want to scream about the fact that the foreigners are taking our jobs. You know, I don't know how to say this, but I'm just going to be as clear as I can. There was a time your competition was Kirinyaga Construction. Your competition was the guy next door, the guy with the office building opposite yours. Today, your competition is global. If you can't do it, there's somebody a phone call away, a Skype call away who can do it. It's that simple. But this particular video is for young people in business. I love your entrepreneurship spirit. I love the fact that you are the hustler generation. But the hustle is international, and the hustle still requires you to deliver on two things. You must deliver on the promise, and you must deliver what you have said you will. And Nairobi, I can't say Kenya, Nairobi has two types of hustlers. The hustlers who are so committed to the trade and what they do, they see themselves becoming bigger and better in 3 years, 5 years, and they give it their all. That's why people like Shiro Waithaka, are being named by Michelle Obama and Sheryl Sandberg on Facebook and stuff like that. This girl makes beds. You'd think, by the way, and if you're watching this from outside the country, you'd think that all Kenyans have a fun kids bed at home. It's you guys who are now importing them. Us guys are yet to catch up, but we thank you for the spotlight that you put on her. So there's those hustlers. And then there's the jokers, and I'm sorry, most of them are guys. My personal examples. This was about 3, 4 years ago. This guy had a video DVD delivery service. He'd send you a list of things he has to offer. You pick the CDs you want, he delivers to your office. First time, I take about 6, 2, skip, clarity is rubbish. I let him know. Second time, same thing happens. Third time, 5 CDs, 3 are rubbish. I remember sending him a message and asking him, what is wrong with you? Why am I paying you? And I pay you up front for such substandard work. To which he texted me and told me, Acha pressure karoni Christmas. I was like, it's Christmas? He has never heard from me to this day. My money doesn't know Christmas, okay? And your business doesn't know Christmas. But what you want is a repeat customer, and the only thing you have to do is deliver on the promise, okay? Recently, there's a guy I used to bring in my stuff. So you order on Amazon, it goes to somebody else, and then they bring it in. Now, we all know you could do this with any other company, but I'm really big on supporting young businesses, especially young people, because, big conglomerates already have enough money. I've got to support the hustle. This guy, the first time, he messes up my consignment, and I'm like biting my tongue. I'm like, you're young, I'll give you a chance. Second chance, my messages to him start with words like, it's been 2 months. This is from Amazon. It's been 2 months. You receive the stuff, I still don't have my things, you're avoiding my phone calls. Eventually, I lose it because one of the items that I had actually ordered off Amazon was a gift for my mother. And of course, he's avoiding my calls like we're dating. And I am just like, Argh! So eventually I get him on the line. And this guy has enough to tell me to chill. I hang up because I was like, if I talk, he might never recover from just the mental scar. Remember, I texted him, I said, chill? I've been chilling for 2 months. Get your act together. Young man, young woman. Your competition isn't the guy making these tops in town. Your competition isn't the other chick baking cupcakes. Your competition is global, and I got options, and so does everybody else. You need to get into a business mentality. Starting up, doing a hustle, that's not the job. Keeping it going and delivering and getting repeat customers and referrals, that is the job. And if you can't deliver on the promise, you're cooked. And no amount of whining to government, to the Youth Development Fund, screaming about the fact that you don't get a chance is going to save you from the fact that you don't know how to keep a promise. Your job is to deliver on the job, one job at a time, one customer at a time. So, there are people like me who want to give you a chance. Don't screw it up. Your competition isn't Briar, isn't Kimani, isn't Cynthia. Your competition is sitting in New York. Get your act together.
Hi, guys. Did you hear you were being told that it's guys who usually do stuff like that? And that video, the reason I liked it, and I think even Professor Ndemo's sentiments just a few minutes before have been echoed in that clip. We need to get our acts together as entrepreneurs. Because one thing, and this is what I decided to start with this clip, and the reason is, many of us start our businesses as side hustles without having that mentality of we want to grow this thing. So we start everything so haphazardly. We don't know what we want to be, how we want to organize ourselves, and where we want to go. And that's usually the biggest problem I find with most entrepreneurs. So just with that in mind, I want us to start off at the beginning. So before we even start running our businesses, what kind of businesses do we want to set up? I'm sure in the group there are people with companies. Can I just see a representation of people with companies? Okay. The rest of you are sole proprietors or partnerships? Who is a sole proprietor here? Okay. Partnerships? Okay. So what are the reasons why people decide to go to these different vehicles? I'll call them vehicles for now because each of them is a vehicle. Now, number one, as you can see, there's a sole proprietorship, there's a partnership, and there's a company. And each of these vehicles usually have different advantages and disadvantages. Now, just to begin with, let me begin with the sole proprietorship. This is the easiest to form. This just requires one person to form. Typically, you'll fill out one form and go to the company's registry, hand it in, pay a little money, and you're set to go. But usually, what are the disadvantages of this kind of vehicle? For the people, I saw some people raise their hands, the ones with sole proprietorships. Now, what you find with a sole proprietorship is that, number one, you have no limited liability. So say your business goes bust. Your debt collectors will come for your business items and your personal items. So if you have things in your house, personal items, they come for those. So that's what they talk about when they talk about limited liability and unlimited liability. Now, previously, the advantage of the sole proprietorship was that you could form it as one person. However, with the new Companies Act, you can actually form a company now as one shareholder. Previously, you were required to have at least two. Now you're just required to be one shareholder. You can be either a company shareholder, and we'll come to the definition of what a shareholder is and what a director is, because I find many people confuse those two terms. So now, under the new Companies Act, you can actually form a company as an individual, whether as a natural individual or as a company. And that now has overlapped the advantage that used to be there for sole proprietorships. All right? And with the company, you have the advantage of, if, for example, your business went bust, so you have XYZ company, and you are the only proprietor there. You're the only shareholder in that particular company, and your business goes bust. Debt collectors or courts cannot come for your personal property. They will only attach the company property. So if the company, say, has a car or has assets within the office building, they'll come for those assets. They won't come for your personal assets, as is the case with the sole proprietor. Now, for partnerships, you find that For some professions like ours, I know especially lawyers, accountants, you're required to have some personal liability towards your client. And therefore, they don't allow us to actually form companies. Otherwise, all lawyers would have formed companies because, as we all know, lawyers sometimes may not necessarily be the most straightforward of people, but that's not me. I'm very straightforward. So what you find with partnerships is that there are two types of partnerships. There are general partnerships. And what you are accustomed to say with the old law firms, which have Kamau, Odhiambo, and Njoroge, those were general partnerships. Those partners individually were liable for any liabilities that befell that partnership. Now, the difference between that and a partnership such as Umsizi is that Umsizi is sort of a hybrid between a partnership and a company. So we have limited liability, but at the same time, we can still do the things that a partnership does. So I think from that, you have a clear picture of what kind of vehicles we are looking at. Now, again, the costs of setting up those usually vary. Usually a company is most expensive, then you go to the partnership, then you go to the sole proprietorship. So this is why many people will opt for, say, the sole proprietorship as opposed to a company. But in the long run, you have to think about what happens if my business goes bust. I always tell people that usually the marriage is all fun and games, but usually during the divorce, that's where the problem is. So always think about the problem, the possible problem at the end, and try and work towards solving that. Yeah? Now, for each of these companies, again, for each of these vehicles, you find that the tax liabilities are dealt with differently. For a sole proprietor, the tax liability is upon the individual, as opposed to a company where it's separate. So if you're a shareholder in a company, the company is the one which is going to be taxed. If, for example, you are employed by that company, you're going to be taxed separately under your employment income, and we'll look at that, okay? But for a sole proprietorship, they assume that you are the business and the business is you. So the liability is to you individually. For partnerships, again, they will tax the partners. And again, as I said, for companies, you'll find that the company itself is dealt with as a separate human being, different from its shareholders and whomever else works for it. Another difference you find is for partnerships, you can only be up to 50 people in the partnership, which is usually not normal. I guess the only people I've had with such big partnerships is usually very big law firms and accounting firms abroad. Here, I've never heard of any partnership which has up to 50 people. Now, for companies, you can have as many as you want, depending on whether it's a public or private company. So those are some of the differences. If there's anything you need to query, just ask me as we go along, okay? Now, once you set up the company, so I'm not going to go through the process of setup. That's very administrative. So if you have any questions on that, I can always help you with that later. Yes.
Just a clarification. You said with the new type of partnership, such as Umsizi, you said it's sort of a hybrid. So what is this that the partners are not liable for in something like Umsizi, while in a general partnership they would be liable?
So in a general partnership, every person would be equally liable. So if you have 3 partners, you'll be equally liable for any debts. Now, in a partnership such as Umsizi, there's a managing partner who is liable only to a specific extent. So it's limited to that extent. But mostly it will come back to their company itself. The partnership itself as a unit. It's dealt with as a unit. The general partnerships are not dealt with as units. They're just dealt with as a number of people coming together to do business. But for a partnership such as Umsizi, we even get an individual PIN certificate for the partnership, as opposed to the old partnerships where each of the partners would have to give their PIN certificate and they're dealt with as individuals. So that's the difference. Yeah. Okay. So on the constitutive documents, so once you set up the company, of course you'll have your certificate of incorporation, Typically, the old companies, you'd have a long memorandum showing you all the objects you can possibly do under the sun. So you'd have like 45 objects. But now, under the new Companies Act, they've changed that. You're only required to have two main objects. They assume that you're able to do all these other things. So you'll say probably if you're in manufacturing, you'll say my main object is manufacturing, and maybe a second objective may be investment, as opposed to the whole list that used to be there in the previous memorandum. So those are just the subtle differences. Then for partnership, you'll again have a certificate of registration, and then you'll also be given a partnership deed. What a partnership deed does is really just to give you an idea of what each of the partners' responsibilities are within and how to deal with each other. So it does the same work as what the articles of association would do for a company, how to manage the partnership among yourselves as partners, okay? Then for a sole proprietor, because you are the company and the company is you, or rather you're the business and the business is you only get a certificate of registration and you're ready to go, in that sense, in the sense of the constitutive documents. Now, other requirements that you will need when you're setting up, you will require your PIN certificate. So depending on what your tax liabilities are, the company will require a PIN certificate. It will require to register for NSSF. It will require to register as a company for NHIF. And then the individuals in that would also require their own. When it comes to a partnership, the individual partners, of course, will have their PIN certificates as people who are earning income in Kenya. So they will be required to have their own PIN certificates, and they'll be required to also remit as business owners. And I'll come to the issues around tax in a much later slide, but these are the basic requirements when you're starting out. And this is not even something that you can push anymore, because now when you form a company, for example, they give you all these documents. So you have to give all the details of the people, the things that you're going to do. And when you're getting your certificate of incorporation, they actually issue you with your PIN, they issue with your NSSF certificate, they issue with your NHIF certificate, and then now you'd have to go, and in each individual business will have its own business licenses. So depending on what industry you are in, you will be required to have business licenses. For example, I, as a lawyer, have to have my practicing certificate, which is issued by Law Society of Kenya. An accountant will have to have something else, okay? A business running in town, for example, will have to have the city council permits and all these things. So those are some of the things you, as a business person starting up, those are some of the things that you have to think about before you start doing anything on paper, all right? Now, I just wanted to go into a little bit about raising capital, because I get these questions a lot of the time when people are starting up, and this is specifically for companies, not partnerships necessarily. Okay, a bit of partnerships, but mostly companies. How many people are aware of equity financing and debt financing? Okay, so a good number. So I just want to have the idea in your head, then you can go and read further on some of these things. But what I want you to be clear is that equity financing relates to share capital. Now, what is share capital? This is the amount of money you raise from shares. So for example, when you're starting up and you're thinking, we are 3 of us, we want to raise 100,000, for example. How much is each person supposed to raise? And then how many shares are they going to be issued based on whatever monies they raise? So if somebody raises maybe 30, another one 30, another one 20, or something like that, each of them is apportioned whatever it is. Now that is what you refer to as share capital. And when it comes to debt financing, this is basically anything to do with loans. And just another thing I get asked a lot is, when somebody new is coming in, what do we need to do? Do we need to, say, have the shares at a higher value? So some of these things are things you need to look at, but these are things you need to look at as you grow and and become bigger. And when you want to introduce new people, when other people are exiting, these are some of the things you want to be thinking about. So for example, if you have a share and your share is worth 100 shillings, and a new person is coming in, you've already done business, you have networks, you have all these things. There is a premium you want to add to your shares each time a new person comes in. That difference is what you want to call the share premium. So if originally, for example, your shares were 100 bob, and you want a new person to come and they have already started doing business, you've already started doing business, you have traction in the market, you want to give them the share at a higher value. That difference, say if you say 150 shillings, so instead of giving them at the original 100, you give them 150 shillings, that 50 shillings is what you'll call the share premium, okay? Now that's what gives you the advantage of being, say, a founder in an organization. And that 50 shillings can go to anything. There are some people who even mark it up to even 5,000 shillings per share. Even if the original share, nominal value of the share was 100, you can still mark it up to 5,000, depending on what you feel your business is able to do and the value that you've added to your business in the years that you've been there, okay? Then, of course, there is profit and losses and reserves. So sometimes instead of using the profits that you're getting out of your business, you want to plow it back into the organization. That's what we are referring to as reserves. And that can also form capital. So you convert it from profits. Instead of taking the money and eating it, as we Kenyans like to do, we convert it and inject it back into your business. That's what equity financing is basically about, okay? Then there is debt financing. So anything from your bank, from your circle, from your family, from your whatever it is, from your savings, all that is debt. Now, why would we choose to raise capital through shares? Anyone? Risk. There's an answer there on risk. Anything else? It's cheaper. Why is it cheaper? When you look at debt, there has to be an interest factor. But is it really cheaper when you think about the tax deduction? Yeah? So these are some of the things you have to think about. Should I go towards debt? Should I go towards capital? And this is something you really can't figure out at the beginning. This is something probably you figure out in your 3rd to 5th year of your business. But since we are thinking about businesses that are long-term, we are not thinking about a startup which we start as a side hustle, passionate, and then fails. We need to think long-term. Just to echo Professor Ndemo's sentiments, we have a lot of startups which start with a lot of passion but never end up anywhere because no one was serious about it in the first place. So these are some of the issues you need to think about. Do I want to issue different classes of shares? Do I want to issue shares at a premium? Okay. Do I want to raise my capital through debt? Because if I raise it through debt, that means I'm not diluting my ownership of the company. But at the same time, when I raise it through shares, I don't get tax deductions as I would get if I raise it through debt. Sorry, if I raise it through shares, I won't get tax deductions as I would raise through debt. So these are some of the things you have to think about. You have to understand what securities people are willing to take when they issue you capital on debt. Are you able to service it? Do you have money? Do you have titles? Do they want guarantees? What do they want for that debt? And is it something that you are able to service as a debt, or it's something you're going to lose because you're not able to? And another thing I want to point out is this issue of personal guarantees. I have had many cases of people who issue personal guarantees and they don't realize that when you issue a personal guarantee, you are liable. So if your friend, for example, my friend Anne here, tells me to guarantee her personally, and she's not able to pay her 100,000 or 200,000 debt, I am fully liable. So that's one thing as people starting out, we need to be very cognizant of the liability that follows you when you issue a personal guarantee is something you need to note. Yeah?
I just wanted to clarify that when she talked about NSSF and SIF and whatever. That's all cost. And when you come to debt, you have to be very careful because I see so many people go to the bank and instead of you taking like 2 million, because they see maybe the collateral you give is good, they say, I can give you 4 million. If you have no use for the extra 2 million, don't take it, because it would actually attract some interest. And other common mistakes, which she may not put here, is rent. I have seen many people that I mentor. You walk to their enterprise and find space like this here. Say, I have got the space. This is a fixed cost. So if you actually find a garage or a relative who can give you 2 by 2 meter, that's how you begin.
Thank you. So these are just some of the things that we have to be very careful about. And the issue of debt, I will re-emphasize. If you're going to take debt, you must be willing to be able to pay back.
My question is about the equity, share capital, about share capital. If I bought some shares of my friend company, what in terms of liability? If the company fails, my personal capital or my personal money, are they liable to pay his debt if I took some share of his company?
If it's a personal guarantee. Yes.
Would he go and say, now this thing is dead, give me my money? No, because you are the last one to be paid from all the monies. If there was money, assets sold, the shareholders are the last to be paid. And that's why I said this is how you share the risk. That's why most startups don't go for shares. They will give you something like preference share, which means you would be paid ahead of them. So don't go like, I've given you 20% shares and you are happy. You would share the trouble with him.
Company collapses, say you go into liquidation, first of all, the people who will be paid, number one, are the people with fixed charges. And fixed charges are things, like what the bank takes. If they take your title and they say, against this title, we are going to give you this amount of money. Those are the people with the first priority. After that, any money that is left out of the company, it will go to government. So if there's any fee that is outstanding to the government, any taxes, anything like that, then there are also usually employees. There's an amount which they give, up to a certain amount they give employees. Okay? If there's any money left, it will then go to the floating charges. So these are people with partial securities. Then after that, you go to preference shareholders. If there's any money left, ordinary shareholders. So you see where you are on the ladder. You're the last. And that's why I said if there's any money left. So that's the risk you take up as a shareholder, ordinary shareholder. But at the same time, as an ordinary shareholder, you're the one who makes decisions, and we'll come to that slide. You're the one who makes decisions for the company. So it is up to you to ensure that the company is well run and is making profits, so that you don't end up at this point. Okay? I hope we've answered your question. Yeah.
If you succeed, it flips again. That you are the one who would get the most of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how it goes. And that's why you need to be very careful. Do I want to be a preference shareholder, or do I want to be an ordinary shareholder? But as a preference shareholder, you don't make decisions. You just rank higher when it comes to profits. Or if the company is being liquidated, then any payout that comes out of the company. Okay? So that's how it plays out. Now, let's talk a little bit about governance. Who is a shareholder? And this is basically, I'm talking about the vehicle called companies. Who is a shareholder? A shareholder is the owner of the company. So that is the person who takes the risk. As we've said, when you're listed and the company is liquidated, you're the person who takes the risk, the biggest chunk of the problem. If it's the loss, you're the one who's going to take the biggest problem. If it's a profit, then you also take the biggest chunk. All right? Then who is a director? So a director is a person who oversees the company's running. This is not a day-to-day person like a manager. And this is what many of us entrepreneurs do. We are shareholders, we are directors, and we are managers. What is the problem with that scenario? When you're a shareholder, you're a director and a manager. What's the problem with that scenario? Accountability, thank you. There is no accountability. Who are you reporting to? If you are taking money for yourself out of the company's pot, who are you going to report to? Yourself. And this is always the problem with entrepreneurs, because when you go to big corporations, there are structures which separate all these things. But as entrepreneurs, we start out as a mixed pot. And that governance issue always clashes with accountability when you don't have all these things properly laid out. Now, types of shareholders, I've already told you, there are preference shareholders, there are ordinary shareholders. There are many types. You can decide what kind of shareholder you want to be in those separate classes. So ordinary, you can have like type A or B, but those are now for really bigger companies. For us guys, at this level, we would probably be looking at probably preference shareholders and ordinary shareholders. Now, as we look at this, why would you want to be a preference shareholder? The main reason you want to be a preference shareholder is because you get paid. If you're going to be earning a fixed amount of money, you are paid before ordinary shareholders. So whatever profits are made, you already have your fixed portion, and whatever is left now, that is shared among the ordinary shareholders. However, when you come to preference shareholding, you actually do not make decisions. All the decisions are made for you. Ordinary shareholder is the guy who is at the bottom of the pile when it comes to losses, but also at the top of the pile when it comes to profit. However, when it comes to being paid out, they'll pay out first all the people with the fixed amount. So you'll pay any person you owe money, your rent, government taxes, everything. Once all that is done, then you will be dealing with now the ordinary shareholder. So those are the differences. What happens is when you've already started up and you don't want somebody to take control of your company, you're a founder and you feel passionate about this company of yours, usually preference shareholding is the best way to get money without giving out control. How many of you watch Shark Tank? Do you ever listen to the conversations they have about wanting the portions and why there's always pushback? And that's the thing, it's about control. Because when you control the company, you call the shots. So one thing we need to think about when we are bringing new people in is, do we want them to control our company, or do we just want their capital, which will pay back either as a loan or as through preference shareholding? So those are some of the decisions you need to think about when you're bringing in new people. You have a question? Okay.
I think it's good you tell them.
Yeah.
the levels. If someone tells you it's gonna take 66 points, I don't know, 7, you can decide to throw you out, and there's nothing you do.
Yeah, he's a majority.
I mean, he's a majority
shareholder.
Yeah. There are levels of
Yes.
of control. I don't know.
Exactly. So 50. That's why you find sometimes people just want 51.1%, because then they are majority because of that 1.1. You remember the Kenyan elections? Yes, the 50 plus 1. That whole idea is because of control. So when you want to control whether people want to take the control of your business, you need to figure out how much ordinary share capital are they holding, what percentage. Because the preference don't actually count for control. Only ordinary count for control. Okay? Yes.
Okay, I think you've answered my question partly.
Okay.
And then
no problem.
okay,
ask
and then
as you go along.
the other one is, I have formed a company, and my main objective is to make profit, right? Now, how am I going to make that profit in the long run if, say, we have all that hierarchy, and I still want to get my money? Like I want full control of the money because I founded the company.
That's why I said, as a founder, you need to figure out which kind of new shareholder you want to add on to your company. You see, if you're a founder and you're alone, you have all the profits to yourself as an ordinary shareholder. But if you say had gone to Professor Ndemo and told me he might need an injection of 5 million, and he tells you, why am I giving you the 5 million? Is it a loan or is it as part of the company? You want to be smart enough to say, okay, I'll give you only 30% so that I remain with 70, and I'll give you that 30% at premium. So those are some of how you play with some of this structuring. Okay? So you'll tell him the original value of the share was 100, but I have worked so hard with this business, it's now worth 10 million, say. So even if I'm going to give you 30%, I'll give you 100, but at a premium of 4,900 per share. That's how you get money without really ceding control. Or you can go through the preference share method and tell him, I can only give you preference shares, so that whatever control you are left with. But with preference shares, you'll have to share your profit. Now that's the difference, as opposed to premium. When you take at premium, premium is like goodwill. Who has ever gone to a business and you're told you have to pay goodwill of this amount of money? So that goodwill just goes into the air, so to speak. And it's beneficial to the founder, not the person coming in. But it's because of the value you've built with the company. If you're just starting up and you have nothing, there's no value to show, then there's nothing really you can say you're adding value to this. So depending on where you are in your business, then those are some of the options. Yeah? Then something I wanted also to say, you said if you have a company making profit, I forgot to mention that there are companies for profit and for non-profit. So depending on, but here I'm sure everyone wants to make money, right? So let's focus on the ones for profit. I don't think there are NGO people here. There are NGO people here. One. I'll give you another tutorial. Yeah? Okay. So what are the mandatory shareholder rights? And these are now the mandatory shareholder rights for the ordinary shareholders. So they get a share of the dividends. So if the company makes a profit, then you get a share of that. Okay? During voting, and that's why I said control, they're the ones who make the decisions at the meetings. Then you must invite all ordinary share capital holders to meetings. Okay? You don't have to invite debenture holders or debtors, bankers, no. Ordinary share capital holders. If the preference shares have some voting rights, some of them you can make them to have some voting rights, then they can also be invited. But always thinking about ordinary share capital holders are the people who make decisions and control the company. And at the end of the day, they're the ones who get the profit, and if there are losses, also bear the losses. Okay? Now, meetings. How many of you have board meetings in your companies? The people who said have companies. Mike, you don't have meetings? Okay, good. You you have a meeting with yourself in the company. Okay, no. That's still a meeting. Skype meetings are still meetings. And this is the idea that we've put in our head, that a meeting has to be around a table. No, it does not have to be around a table. You can have a conference call. You can have a Skype meeting. We are moving towards the technology age. We are not still stuck in, we must have a meeting seated around a table, having tea and mandazis, like in government offices. Okay? So how many people have meetings? Let's start there. In their companies. So you guys run businesses without having meetings. How do you know where you're going? How do you know you're talking the same language with your fellow partners? Great. That's another, I need to do another tutorial on meetings and governance for SMEs, right? So ideally, you must have a separate board from your shareholders, ideally. Sometimes you'll have the dual role, but ideally you should have board meetings, because you remember, directors are the people who oversee the running. Shareholders are just the owners. Directors oversee the running of the company. Management are the people who do the day-to-day. So has this been paid? How much is owed? What's happening? Day to day. Directors need to look at the long-term vision of this company and say, this is where we want to be in the next 5 years. Or is this why all the SMEs are collapsing after 1 year? Because we are not having a longer-term vision for our organizations. You had a question? Please, somebody give her a mic.
Yes, but at the beginning, you don't have enough money, so you don't think about have director or management staff. So what do you do at the beginning if you don't have money to hire people to engage people for these different management teams? So what we can do to...
I understand your question, and I will probably come to it in one of my slides. My theory is, the more you hang on to money, and you keep saying you have no money, you have to become creative as an entrepreneur, because of course you have a little money. So you have to be creative. And I'm not necessarily saying that you have to have different people doing these things. But you need to have clarity of, when I'm standing in this meeting, who am I standing as? Am I standing as a shareholder? Am I standing as a director? Or am I standing as a manager? And all those things have different roles. So if you're the CEO, you need to have your terms of reference as your CEO. As a board of directors, when you go to the board, you need to be standing there as a different person. And when you're in a shareholders meeting, you need to stand as a different person. And that's why you need to understand each person's role in this cog. So I know at the beginning you cannot necessarily say that you want to have different people for different things, but you need to think about it as you're starting. And you need to have a long-term vision. You remember what Caroline said? Your competition is not local. Your competition is global, number one. Number two, when you're looking for people who are financing you, and I'll allude to that in the other slides. When you're looking for financiers, and probably Professor Ndemo can back me up on this, they want to see some governance structures which are separate. Most financiers, you work with an NGO, you have to have some audited accounts somewhere. They want to know, does the board sit? What does the board discuss? What is the strategic direction of this particular organization? Where are you seeing yourself? Before they put money into your company. No one is going to give you money if you don't even know where you're going as a company. So those are some of the things you need to think about. But you need to know, when you're standing in a certain meeting or position, who are you standing as? Are you standing as a shareholder? Are you standing there as a director? Or are you standing there as management? Okay? Now, ideally, yeah. Yes.
My question is about advisory shares. How is there any particular criteria that one can use to determine, what share you're going to give based on the pool of shares that you have?
Now, when you say advisory shares, you mean? Because I've not come across that.
Okay, in this case, I'm referring to you've set up a company or startup. You advisory board. So you're looking at like industry experts, and you want to give them just a piece of the cake for them to be part of it. So is there any particular criteria that one uses?
There's really no criteria. It's up to you as the founder to decide what that piece of the cake is and whether it will affect their independence. Because you see, when people are shareholders, they are never independent. They have interests in that company. So sometimes it may not be good for objectivity. They'll do something because at the back of their minds, they want to get that thing. They are not objectively looking at this as a professional. And that's why I said we need to step out of this thing where you have directors who are shareholders, who are managers, and at least try and separate some of the things. And that's one thing I also get a lot when I'm dealing with SMEs, because this question of, must a shareholder be a director? Who can answer that question? Must a shareholder be a director? Yes?
Hello.
Wait, we'll come to that.
I think that in the case of a startup, you're probably just alone. So I think that when you're still trying out your concept and taking this idea to market, you're probably the director and shareholder.
But the question is must.
I think for the case of avoiding these liabilities and having to answer to, that's why most people opt to answer to themselves until you've proven your concept.
Do you think it's a good idea?
Personally, yeah, I think that because what you find is that when you go to probably an investor, they want to see that you've already proved this idea that it works. They don't want you to take to them an idea.
That's management. And that's why I said we need to understand what we are talking about. An investor will probably be dealing with management and the board, as opposed to shareholding and directorship. Because you remember, a shareholder is just the person who puts the money in. Okay? It may be 100 shillings, it may be 5 million shillings. But the director is the one who is overseeing that money is being used for the purpose it's being used in the long run. The manager is the one looking at it day to day. The budget for this month, broken down to this week, broken down to today. Question is, where do you have to have the shareholder as a director? The answer is actually no. Sometimes you will benefit from somebody who is a professional and will give you ideas in terms of structuring. Because I find many people leave Form 4 and they're like, I want to be a hustler. Great. Where do you have any prior knowledge of how to run a business? You have a great idea, and great ideas are always welcome. But do you have any prior experience of running a business? You probably will benefit from having another director. Even if you are a director, you will benefit from having another director who does not necessarily hold shares to give you somebody to bounce off ideas. And preferably, if that person is well versed in business matters and running of companies or running of operations, you will benefit from that. As opposed to thinking, I want to have this idea to myself, I'm the one who is going to have everything, it may not help in the long run. It will give you somebody else to give advice. You don't have to give them your shares. In fact, you can just pay them a fee. Tell them every time we have a discussion or a meeting or per quarter, this is the fee I'm going to give you. Give me your ideas on this issue. So a director does not necessarily have to be a shareholder. A shareholder does not necessarily have to be a director. They can be two separate people. One person can just put in money, another person can run the organization. So that's one thing we need to understand as entrepreneurs. Benefit from people with knowledge. Don't hang on to your ideas and not grow them because you're trying to hide everything from the world. Which same world you're going to try and sell your ideas to? Get somebody who has good experience, can help you grow this thing into a better vehicle. Okay? So ideally, we are supposed to have 4 board meetings a year, ideally. I know we are startups, so we probably have more than that because we are in close proximity if we are 2 partners or 3 partners, but at least try to have 4 in a year. I don't think that's too much to ask. Shareholder meetings at least once a year. And shareholder meetings ideally are to vote on issues which affect the company, and also to decide, so how much of the profit are we going to share as dividend, how much are we plowing back into the company, things like that, looking at the financials. So if you have a guy there if you are the partner who is not engaged in the day-to-day management, you want to know, has my other partner also, have they been just utilizing the funds for their own purpose, or have they been driving the agenda of this company? So those are some of the things you want to be discussing at the shareholders meeting, which we also call companies meeting. Once a year. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Board meetings at least 4 times a year. And the reason is you want to have a strategic direction for your company. You don't want to be the company which is constantly stuck on River Road. You also want to have office space on the other side of town, maybe Ngong Road. Yeah? And without strategic direction or strategic thinking, you will never move forward. And strategy is something else you probably, Professor would need to get somebody just to talk to them about strategy, because that's a whole other item. Without thinking about strategy, you're going nowhere. You're going around in circles. Okay? Then another important thing, legally, you must do as a company, you must file annual returns. And these returns are just saying, who are my directors? What is my shareholding? Has any shareholder changed in the course of the year? If you have a company secretary, who is the company secretary? If you have financials, you attach them to the financials and you file them at the registry at least once a year. If you are changing directors, you must also file that change. Don't have these directors who, so and so, nani kuja ukwe director wangu. Because that's what many SMEs are doing. Then you ask them, where is the paperwork for, how is this guy a director? He's not a director, and yet he's been making decisions about your company. Therefore, if you go to court, he has no liability. He's not a director anywhere. He'll say, which paper is showing that I am a director and that I made decisions? So if you're going to bring in anybody to help you make decisions as a board, that paperwork needs to be filed. If you're going to increase your shares or share capital in the course of the year, that shareholding needs to be changed. If you change anything in the company, that has to be filed at the registry. Now, I want us to read this little case study. Can everyone see the case study? I'll give you 2 minutes to read it and then we can discuss. So everyone has had a chance to read that? So Mr. Odhiambo is a sales manager in Mambo Yote. In the last year, the company has recruited a number of new staff and interns. He's charismatic and a man of means. Okay? He enjoys evenings out with young ladies, some of whom are employees of the company. Many of them don't mind the attention from the manager as he takes them to fancy restaurants and buys them expensive gifts. Ms. Nduta, however, is the new intern in IT and is not agreeable to Mr. Odhiambo's advances. She's offended by his persistent text messages to take her out for a drink and the unsolicited, indecent WhatsApp forwards. She reported to her boss, who said her hands were tied. She has decided to take the matter up with you as the CEO. What do you do? What are some of the things we can pick out from this? Odhiambo is doing his job. Any other thoughts?
So I would imagine this holds true in Kenya, but in the US, for certain, you would risk litigation. Because there's human resources issues. As a boss, as a manager, as someone with power, you can't wield your power over a subordinate, and if you do, the subordinate has legal rights to sue you for undue influence or pressure. So as a CEO, that's a risk you need to assess as a potential loss of revenue for your business if you're involved in litigation.
So I've worked for a company that has had such a scenario before.
It's very common in Kenya, by the way.
Um,
If you ask all these ladies here, I'm sure they have received such, me included. But continue.
So I'm just going to say how the CEO of the said company handled it.
Yes.
So what happened is that when the lady went to the CEO to report, apparently when these employees sign contracts, there's something about relationship inside the office. And relationships with employees, there are such limits that you cannot have, first of all, relationships within the office because they affect both of you in terms of how much you
So this
give
is
to the
contained
company.
in the contracts?
Yes, when they signed during employment.
Mhm.
So what happens is if you disobey said contract, you are given the first warning letter. So the sales manager was given a warning letter, and the rules are that upon being given the second warning letter, you'll also be given a firing letter. So on the second, after he was given this first warning letter, he stayed on for maybe 6 months, but the CEO again, another lady came up with the issue again, so he was fired. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts? Or you guys are in one-man companies, you don't... This doesn't happen. Yes.
What do you mean, like advances?
So I'm talking about sexual advances. Just to be clear.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I use the word indecent there so that I cover all the scope.
Okay.
Yes. There's a hand there.
Morning.
Morning.
I think that if I were the CEO in this case, first of all, I'd have to make sure that it really is against company policy, because sometimes you forget that people need to be told some things outright. We assume it's all common sense, but really it isn't. So after enforcing it in the company policy, then the consequences should also be outlined as such. I wouldn't fire him as such if he's a good salesman, but there can be a punishment, surely, that can be meted out in him.
Excellent. Any other thoughts?
Very complicated.
Yes.
And if Odhiambo is the sole purpose why the sales are happening, and you get this, by the way.
Yes.
Somebody is super in terms of his work, but has some problems. What do you do? If you fire him, you lose.
And those are the tough decisions CEOs have to make. And what I find is, if you do not have any company ethos or ethics, then you'll continue with the guy. Because you'll think about the money versus the bigger picture. Because as she pointed out, there is issue of risk of litigation. All the money he makes is going to go into that. If 5 girls come up, like in the Bill Cosby case, how many women have come up? Thousands. And you know in Kenya, you have no limit for criminal litigation, unlike in the States. So even if you committed a crime, however many years ago, you can still be litigated for it now. So it's different from in the States, because I've seen they have a statute of limitation.
Can Shebesh go to court?
She can. She can. Definitely. She just chose not to because it was a political decision she made. But she could definitely have gone to court. So can Esther Passaris in the recent JKL. You watch TV, right? Okay. Just to be clear that we are on the same page. Yes. So some of these things we need to think about as we grow, because we are hoping that our startups are not stunted They are not going to be stunted. As we said, they are not going to be stunted in a small shop on River Road for the rest of their lives. They are going to grow. So these are some of the things we need to think about as we grow and as we partner with people. Who are we partnering with? What kind of people and what are they bringing to the table? Are they bringing to the table sexual harassment suits? In Kenya, you know that there's an act. So if you do something like this, somebody will easily take you to court. It's not an issue. So some of these things, as we grow, and the reason I picked this example is because it happens to every company I've worked for, there's always a guy.
I have a question. Just before you move to the next slide.
Yes.
Now, you've talked of risk of litigation.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, will Odhiambo be sued as Odhiambo or as that company?
Will be sued as Odhiambo. However, depending on what level he is in that company, what rounds will be doing in social media, in newspapers, on TV, reputational damage. So as much as you're just thinking about him as a salesman and he'll be sued by himself and you don't want to get involved, your hands are tied, like the boss of the lady, you will get so much reputational damage that it will cost you your business. Because if you are me, Reba, who is sort of a feminist, I'll think about that company. I'll be like, no. If I can get the same product from another company which respects women, then I'll go to that company. Of course, there'll be people who will still come to your company, but you'll also lose a number. If it's a donor coming from a country which respects women, then they'll say, no, we are not working with these people. They do not have the right culture and ethics in their company. And this is what brings me to this slide. Because there are so many different scenarios. And there's also the issue of corruption, taking kickbacks, all that stuff. What is your company policy on that? Yes.
I just want to add something. I think the company itself can have a risk to be sued, because we can say that the company has cover.
Yes,
Mr.
actually
Onjama.
you can be sued together. Yes, you're right.
And then the risk is really direct.
But you see, at least if you do your job, there's a question, yeah?
I think a number of people raised really good points about how to get in front of the problem, right? Which is making sure your contracts have a means to provide some sort of clear instruction of what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how to deal with it if it comes up. Same thing with company procedures and company policy. So that's getting in front of the problem. So if we're talking about startups that are just seedlings of ideas that are trying to get off the ground, these are really important pieces to have in place. But at what point should a startup be really prioritizing putting these sort of parameters or protections in place?
Especially when you're looking for financing and you're looking to expand. Because you'll start as a startup probably 1 to 3 years. I'm thinking that at that point, you should now be ready either to fly or to close shop and decide that this idea is not working. So we've moved from the startup, now we are moving into growth, the growth phase. What are you thinking for your company? So you have to think strategically. And that's why I keep referring back to Professor Ndemo's conversation. We need to stop thinking just for the now and this year. We need to think beyond that. And if we think beyond that, we have to have some of these things in mind or in place, however simple it is. However simple it is, whether it's a clause in a contract, saying you are not allowed to have this kind of relationships, you're not allowed to take bribes from suppliers. You know, simple things in the contract will help you. As a startup, we won't even go into the point of policy because policy is probably a bit more complicated for a much bigger whatever. But for a smaller company, have some of these clauses in your contract. Issues around bribes, issues around ethics, issues around sexual harassment. What is the culture of your company? What are you trying to grow? If you're going to merge with somebody else, because sometimes startups are bought out. So you have this startup with all these people who have no culture, no ethics, no direction, and you're trying to merge with somebody else who has all these things. You need to think about that as well. Because those are some of the softer issues somebody trying to finance you, somebody trying to partner with you is going to think about. They're not just going to think about the money factor. That's one of the issues, but all these other things also work out, yes.
I just want to make it clear that in the US, even compliments can amount to sexual harassment, because that's how it begins. Oh, you look nice today, or you should be wearing miniskirts or something. I worked in a company.
It's true.
You can't even you can't even say you look good today. So because it builds up. When you say, oh, thank you, and tomorrow you say, oh, wonderful, and the fifth day, the real advances are.
Can I take you out for drinks?
Can I take you out? So actually, don't compliment.
Just greet. Yes. And unfortunately, we are moving towards that direction. Because with the Sexual Offences Act, there's an act, by the way, go read it. It's all there. And the Sexual Offences Act is not only physical acts, it's even talking to or looking at suggestively or things like that. Go read it. Yes. Litigation is real. Yes.
For men, you know, now there is CCTV. So when you meet a lady, don't turn, just walk straight.
In fact, in the company I worked for, somebody was fired because of CCTV. You know, they were denying that they didn't do this and they did this and there was CCTV. Simple and clear. So some of these things, we need to think about them. So whether it's putting a clause in your contract, your employment contract saying this is not allowed, this is not behavior this company condones. If it's having a simple policy laying out some of these things, this is important. Because we are thinking global. We are not thinking River Road global. Yes.
Now, we're speaking so much about this sexual offense. I'm feeling like it's focused more on the male, on us, because now what can you say when the lady CEO gives you a sexual advance?
Actually, young men, there is a name which I keep on hearing now, sponsors. Sponsors are who? You don't know?
Sponsors are anybody with money.
Anybody
So
with
may
a
be
lot
a
of
lady
money.
or a man.
And there are so many women sponsors. And the people have been complaining that they are messing up the younger people. The same thing as older men messing up with younger girls.
Yeah. So it's both genders. Or let me say all genders. These days genders are 3. So all genders are, you know, they are going to be liable. So in your own time, go to kenyalaw.org, have a look at that act, because it will determine what kinds of clauses you're going to put in your contract, what kind of policies you're going to come up with. However simple. And that's why I'm saying you don't have to have complex things. You just have to have simple things which you build up on as you grow along. Okay?
We can expand a little bit.
Yes.
The Constitution even goes deeper.
Yeah.
That you hired someone and that person is gay, you are bound to respect their rights. I know people say we don't condone this in Africa, let that happen. You would actually be sued, and isn't that true? Because the Constitution actually goes much deeper. Yeah, and you've seen nowadays, gays have been on TV loudly because they know they are protected. But the mindset of us has not changed, because you want to look politically correct by discriminating against the person. There was a young man on TV, and I sat with the men. They kept, why is he doing his hands like that? Kick him out. And we were seated there. So
they would have heart attacks if they traveled out of this country in that case, because they would, I mean, yes. So even Mombasa, yeah, it's widespread. So back to my issue. You need to understand the laws around your businesses, because each of you are in a different sector. You need to go back and understand those laws. I can't go into each of them, okay? You need to ensure that you have basic company policies. If you don't have company policies, at least have specific clauses that you don't compromise in your contracts. Talking about some of these issues around corruption, ethics, treatment of other employees, and most importantly, have procedures in your company where somebody knows that they can report something. As you grow, these things become more real. Right now, probably it seems like you're just trying to hustle to make the next check. But as you grow, you need to start thinking about these things. Now, another very important thing and a very simple thing to do for me is standard operating procedures for your company. You see, like the issue Caroline was talking about, this guy's communication, he didn't get back. Everything is nonchalant. These standard operating procedures will help you sort of have some structure in your company, however small it is, so that you know, if I receive money, this is the process, because those are some of the issues that you face as a small company. Somebody receives money, puts it in their pocket because they are a shareholder. Hii ni pesa yangu. That happens a lot. I know that because I have dealt with issues around that. You need to have specific procedures. If it is company money, there is a receipt book. The money is handled and put in a company account. It is only withdrawn if both signatories agree to it, and it's for a specific purpose. So very important, have standard operating procedures. Even if you're going to write them in an exercise book or type it out, just say when a customer pays, this is the process. Issue them with a receipt. Money every day collected, put into a bahasha and taken to Equity Bank or Family Bank. Now that we hear it's collapsing. But these are some of the simple things you can do for your company just to put it in order. Okay? Very important. Experts and their services. Why do we need this? And I heard somebody saying about how expensive it is. Am I okay with time? Okay, okay. Okay, no. It was a rumor which they have refuted, and we hope they're in the clear. I'm just mentioning it tongue in cheek. Experts and their services. Why do we need this? And who are these people we need? As we are growing, who are these people we need? Or you guys are all set, you know everything. As entrepreneurs, everything. Yes.
We need people, for example, if you're venturing in a field that you don't know, people like you, the lawyers, especially to advise you on the legal issues. The lawyers.
Anyone else?
I think people with the knowledge of accounts and auditing. The management, say professional directors.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just in the operating framework, you just talked of maybe people giving receipts, but I still believe that it's good to automate some systems to avoid pilferage, theft, duplication of receipts.
And that's why I said, depending on what level you are, I'm thinking about the guy on River Road. I'm thinking about the guy on River Road. Once you move to a certain level, you have certain standards. You're going to automate your systems. You're going to have online banking, which is connected to your, there are some things which will be at that level. But when you're starting out, you still just, what I want people to have from the beginning is to have a paper trail. So that if you say, I sold 10,000 pieces, you can track from stock 10,000 pieces left, and from sales, you can balance it out. Just simple methods which can keep you on track. As you go along and as you become more complex, then you, of course, can get, automate. So any other experts we need? Yes. Just shout out. Yes. Yes. probably would fall under professionals of the different sectors. Yeah? Yes.
Yeah, I've just thought of a startup, and when you mentioned that as you start, you don't have money. But getting a lawyer who can give you a pro bono service is not easy. So maybe you give us more advice for startups. How do you get those lawyers who can assist you as a startup? Because many of them charge.
All of them charge.
Actually, they are there. And I've seen young people want to draft a non-disclosure agreement. You could talk to your college mate. You can use such expertise, or just to go to senior lawyers and say, I don't have money, but if you help me, I would appreciate. If you talk to Reba here, I'm sure she would.
Free services to you. And that's why I said, ask as many questions as you can and talk to me if you need to afterwards, because these are usually one-off situations where you get free people to talk to you for, professionals to talk to you for free. But one thing I always tell people is that when you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. If you give people peanuts, you get monkeys. And the reason is sometimes you go so cheap or so free because you're trying to keep all the money, then you get messed up for a whole long period of time. So you need to ensure that whomever is giving these cheap services is actually qualified to do them. So it's like you coming to me and telling me, I want you to defend me in court for a human rights case. I don't do human rights law. I don't. So you need to first understand who is this person you're going to and what can they help you in the area that you're being helped. And then you can always negotiate. You can always negotiate. No one has ever refused a negotiation. You can always negotiate. Number one, pay in installments. Depending on who you're talking to. Like I receive installments many times from SMEs because that is what they're able to afford at that time. So I tell them, okay, do this. You give me first this so that I show you show commitment. Then now we can proceed with an installment basis. So as you get money, you can always pay. So those are some of the options. But let me tell you, there's nothing for free. Very few times you get things for free. And at those times, run and grab those things because they might not come back. But that's just my 2 cents. Yes, please.
I just wanted to, does this work here? Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I just wanted to second Reba a bit on the thing of paying cheap. Reba actually happens to be a lawyer that I once used to set up a company, and it's still a very young startup. And we paid the fees, which relatively appeared like a lot, because just to register the company and get yourself going, that you can get it very cheap. But what I have found as an advantage, and no, I'm not necessarily saying this even to sell her, I'm just giving you my experience, is those extra things that you get, that extra information that you get from lawyers who are dedicated to that particular trade of registering companies and getting things going. So we received a lot of information from them. We received a lot of guidance, which we would have had to pay for elsewhere. And more importantly, connections. Because, at some point we needed, we've needed things down the line. And just a quick email that, might you know somebody with this? Might you know this? And she gives you a name, or two, and it moves you to the next step. So to me, I actually see a lot of value in paying the correct amount, not necessarily a high inflated figure, because you can still pay a high inflated figure to the wrong person. So the trick is in you diligently working towards finding the right service provider who will guide you accordingly, even though it might appear like a lot, but it has value in it.
Thank you. So there you have it. Monkeys, peanuts. People, money. Bottom line, you can negotiate installments or whatever else, or you can give services. You need to be creative. You need to be creative. Because you can get different services from different people and exchange them instead of getting cash. So these are some of the things you can do. Now, yes, please.
Sometimes we say experts you don't want. most people suffer when they get relatives at the very early stage. The day you come to need, power. The day you come to need experts, it becomes a family crisis. They would say, we have built this thing, now you want to leave us and bring in outsiders. So that's why normally, if I want to do something, I do with professionals from day one.
Exactly.
From day one. Because you find they've been going around doing the accounts or talking to some lawyers and giving you advice. You will never remove them. And so many small enterprises die because they are tied up with the family, which came in during the startup stage, and you don't know how to shade them out.
Take the example of Mr. Odhiambo. If he was the husband of the wife who runs the company, what would be the situation? Who would be fired? Exactly. So sometimes some of these things, you don't think about them when you're starting up, but when you start growing, it becomes very tricky. And that's why I said sometimes it's good. As much as you don't have money, try and get professionals, try and get separation of directorship and management and shareholding. So that let Mr. Odhiambo sit at home if the shareholder, get another salesperson, because I don't think he's the only very good salesperson. There might be others. Get a professional, pay them, so that when you demand service from them, it is 110%. Not because he's my brother, I can't really ask him. So he comes to work at 10, leaves at 4, goes out for drinks, doesn't come the next day. Those are usually the problems when you're dealing with familiarity. Yeah? So some of the services I've listed, and we'll just go through some of the things they do. Accounting and tax, and this is very, very important. Very, very important. Don't start trying to do your taxes and your accounting yourself. Even if you have to go look for a CPA Section 4 person, and I'm starting at Section 4 because at least at that point they have a good idea of basic accounting. Get somebody who's cleared school, but also understand what this accounting thing is about. If you can't, outsource. You don't have to employ people, outsource them. Currently, I outsource my accounting for 20K. I'm sure if you bargain, you can get it cheaper. A month. Okay? Because I don't have that many transactions. I'm not a off-the-counter kind of person. So these are some of the things you must have as a startup. And this one, we are not negotiating. I can negotiate on the others. This one you must have. Go get an outsourced accountant. If you're going to get a friend of yours or something, CPA Section 4 and upwards. Please. Because they'll help you set up your accounting systems. So whether they are the manual ones or whether they are computerized, they will set you up, number one. They'll help you maintain your books of accounts. If you have stock, you need to know what's going in, what's coming out. Am I making profit? Am I not making profit? They'll help you with the bank setups. Okay? Every month when money is in your account, hopefully you're not putting it in your pocket. If it's going to the account, you need to marry what the books are saying and what the bank is saying. And if there are any discrepancies, you need to pick those out. They will help you with payroll. If you have more than one staff, say, they need to calculate the taxes of each of those people. If there are any liabilities to be paid to NSSF, NHIF, whatnot, that needs to be done by the accountant. Each person you employ should have a pay slip. Each person should have a pay slip. And this is a requirement from KRA. You must have a pay slip. If you're employing anyone and they don't have a pay slip, you need to sort that out. Now, management accounts. And this is something people don't talk about often. Every month, you must know whether you're making profits or not. How will you know whether you're making profits? You can't just randomly count the cash that you received and then say that's profit. That's not profit. That's just cash inflow. You need to look at what are my expenses for this month, look at what am I getting, and what is the trend in the year. Because you might be thinking that you're making profit or that your company is doing well, but actually you're constantly at a loss and you don't know. So you're just in and out, and maybe you might make more money being employed. It's true. So you need to figure out, am I actually making progress, or am I just going around in circles? Management accounts is what's going to help you with that. Another thing management accounts is going to help you with is if somebody is planning, say, to buy out your startup, or you're planning to bring in new partners to inject capital, they want to see what's happening month to month. Where is this company going? Okay? Then at the end of the year, you'll also need to see what has my company been performing like the whole year. And that's where now your auditor will come in, look at your systems in place, those cash books or those manual systems of yours or those computerized systems, are they working properly? Is it giving a true picture of what the business is how the business is performing? Then most importantly, they assist you with the calculation of taxes. Now, you have heard that I am a CPA, but I am not a tax guru. I know about taxes. I don't do it every day. So, in fact, I had asked a friend of mine to drop in and probably give any other feedback, but I will just go over the things that I think we need to know for now. If you need an in-depth tax session, then I can always talk with Professor Ndemo, and you can have a tax expert. But at this point, I think what we just need to know is, first of all, the basics. What do we need to do basically as a startup, okay? So number one, what income is taxable? There is rental income, investment income, business income, and employment income. And here in this forum, I think what's probably biggest is the business and employment, because the people you employ, that's employment income. If you're employed by your company, that's also your income. And then there's business, what the business or the company is getting. Okay? So that's all taxable. Rental income is also taxable, and residential and commercial. But I will not go into that for this session. Let's look at business income and employment income. Now, every month, those are the returns you must make. It is not negotiable. And nowadays, when your company has a PIN certificate, know that you're getting penalties. Always know that you're getting penalties. For every return you do not file, there is a penalty. So if you don't file your payee taxes by 9th, pay as you earn is the taxes which are applied onto employment income. So if you have employees, there's a scale, and that's what I'm talking about for individual tax. There's a graduated scale. So from 10,000 to this amount, there's a tax rate, then it keeps graduating. Okay? That payee must be paid, and then the returns made by 9th of the next month. So if you're not making those taxes and you have a PIN certificate and you're a company, you probably have penalties as we speak. Next thing you need to be paying is VAT. So for example, I have services. Legal services you need to pay VAT on. There are many other services you pay VAT on. That VAT, first of all, must be remitted to KRA after you have removed the VAT you've paid out as a business, not individual, as a business. So for example, Bill Mike here gives me IT services. I give out legal services. Say my fee note is 20,000. 16% of that, less what the VAT he will charge me for the services, I need to pay that out. So say my VAT on that is 1,000 shillings for purposes of this conversation. The one on my fee note is 1,000 shillings. His is 500 shillings. The one he's charging me. What I need to do is take 1,000, remove 500, and send the 500 to KRA. After that, I need to file my returns by 20th of the next month. So if we are in November, all the services that I have offered in the month of November, all the services that I have paid for, I need to take that, offset it, and by December 20th, I need to have filed my return and paid my taxes for VAT. So there are different kinds of taxes. So there is pay, which is on the employment income, the employees. Then there is VAT on services and goods. So even if I go to the supermarket and say buy things for a seminar I'm having, I'll take that receipt, look at the bottom there is 16% VAT on whatever things I've bought. That I can deduct from the amount of money I need to pay KRA. So you see why you need an accountant? Because you are chasing your ideas. And I'm trying to free you from these manenos. You need to chase your ideas and focus on the core business. So that's why some of these services are very important, because they free you from doing some of these small things. What you now need to do is to just now look that they're doing the right thing. And that's why you need to have professionals who are qualified to do this. Okay? Then there's corporate tax. Corporate tax, that is on companies. 30% is supposed to be paid of whatever profit you've made. So once you've made your revenues, subtracted your expenses, whatever difference you make, and there are different expenses which are allowable and not allowable, and I will not get into that because that is a whole complete tax discussion. So you need to know which are allowable by KRA and which ones are not allowable. Once you deduct that and get your profits, there's a 30% you need to pay. Now, you are supposed to pay your tax every 4th month, 6th month, 9th month, and 12th month. So you're supposed to take, say last year you had a profit of 1 million. Let's assume you're doing very well. You got a profit of 1 million. This year, that was 2015 profits. This year, you're supposed to, at the 4th month, calculate the percentage 4 times, yeah? So 25%. Pay taxes based on last year's. So 25% of the tax you paid last year, you need to pay it by the 4th month. And then the 6th month. And then the 9th month. So you use that estimate of the previous year to pay for this year. Now, if this year you make more than you made last year, that difference you will have to pay at the difference you pay 4th month after year end. Okay? If you made a loss, then that loss, the difference will be carried over to the next year. Now you see why you need an accountant and a tax expert. Okay? Farming business. I don't know if some of you are in agribusiness. It's the same thing as corporate, but this time around you pay 75% of the taxes of last year, 2015's tax, last year, 9th month, and then the 12th month, because they assume that for agribusiness, most of the profits are earned over a year. The difference, if last year you made a lot more money than this year, the difference is carried over to the next year. If you made less, then, sorry, my throat, then you have to pay the difference. So these are some of the things you have to be careful about when you're running a business, because KRA does not care that you didn't know. They expect you to know, and they expect you to find the right people to help you do this. So we need to think about this as we go along.
If I earn this year, say 9 million.
On you as a company, or you as yourself?
As a company,
Yes.
I'm supposed to give that, the 25% of that 9 million split within those 4 months, or what do you actually mean?
So let's assume you have goods you're selling in the company, right?
Yes.
And this last year, you sold goods worth. So the value of the goods, not the profit, the value of the goods was worth, let's say 100,000.
Yeah.
Your expenses, your rent, paying for whatever it is other services maybe came to 50,000. Let's assume that. So this is a company. The difference is 50,000. So the corporate tax will be on this amount. So 30% of this is what you pay to KRA.
Okay.
After you've deducted all the allowable expenses, and that's why I keep saying allowable, because there are some expenses you think are allowable, but they are not. So KRA gives a whole list of the expenses that are allowable and those which are not supposed to be deducted from profit, from revenue. After that, this is what you get. So based on what you get, 30 times 50 is what? 150.
150.
Yeah?
15,000.
15,000. This is the tax you'll have to pay as a company. Okay?
Okay.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that you had employees throughout the year. Okay. So any money you're paying your employees, say 20,000 a year, 20,000 a month. Let's assume that that's your employee you're paying. This employee is going to be taxed on the graduated scale. So there's usually a scale which does 10% from 1 to like 10,000. Let's just assume that's the figure. It's usually around 10 something something, then 15% on the next amount like that. So you're supposed to pay that each month, but you also have to give to file the returns with KRA. Okay? Yeah. For a partnership, what happens in a partnership such as ours? We pay our normal taxes as if we were a company. However, at the end of the year, when we are supposed to get our profits, we pay taxes on that now. So based on what we made, less any expenses, each of us individually, depending on our shareholding. So if our shareholding is 50-50, split the profits into 50-50, each of us pay taxes on that. For a sole proprietor, you will be taxed as if you are an individual. So not as a company, as an individual. So you go with the graduated scale. That's the graduated scale I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. Have I answered your question?
Yes, but that 15,000.
Yes.
Do you pay it every month?
Now, that's what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
Now, if that was last year's tax liability.
Okay.
So say this was 2015. So 2016, you're supposed to pay in advance. Okay, I don't know how to catch you. You're supposed to pay in advance. So let's assume this was your tax liability for 2015. So in 2016, you're actually supposed to split this tax into 4 equal parts. Okay? So let's assume, because I don't want to split this into one of those amounts. So let's assume the 4 parts are 2,000 each. I hope everyone can see. This is just for demonstration. So the 4 parts are supposed to be paid in the 4th month, 6th month, 9th month, and 12th month. Okay? If there is a difference, so because different years you'll make different profits, the difference now is what you'll pay by the 4th month of the next year. Now 2017, you'll work out the difference. And that's what you're supposed to pay. That's why I don't do these things myself. I get an accountant to do that. Because some of these things, you first of all have to understand accounting properly before you're able to file the right returns, because you'll end up either filing more or less and getting penalties or paying more tax than you should. So those are some of the things we need to do. Yeah? I hope that's clear. Now, yes, before I proceed.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
If I'm the founder of a company,
Yes.
and I know I have shares in the company, but I've decided that at the end of every month I'm paying myself an amount X. Now, do I need to pay also the pay as every other employee in my company? Or
are you employed or are you just taking it as a director?
I'm the
Or as a
director,
shareholder?
and
Yes.
I don't want to live on company assets, so I'm saying I'm receiving a salary X.
So salary, if it's a salary, you will be on the graduated scale.
Oh.
Yes. So if they're paying you a salary, you have a contract, you do this for the company, then you're going to be on the graduated scale and you're going to be subject to the employment scales. So that's payee on the graduated scale. Yes. You won't be charged as a company. Yes, you'll just be like an employed person for that company. If it's a director, there's something called director's fees. And there's withholding tax on director's fees. Okay? So that's why I'm saying there are so many different little splinters which you must understand. And if you're trying to focus on growing your business, you might have to first go to do some CPAs or a CCA before you can get this thing right. That is why it is good to get a professional to do it. Yes. Yes, please.
Yes, please, I have sometimes a problem with confidence. You know, nowadays we have many people who are professional, we are expert.
Yes.
So about accounting, is there in Kenya any papers which certify that the professional have done the right thing this year, and which assure you that within 5 years you will not have a problem with the career about what have been done 5 years ago.
So certification of accountants is done by ISPAC. There's a body called ISPAC, the Institute of Certified.
I think he means after the audit.
Okay, so auditing.
Say, for example, what happened with the Chase Bank.
Yes.
Who is holding Deloitte to account? Is that's what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the audit part. So number one, you must have, first of all, for you to be audited, you must have an accountant. Okay. Let's start there. Once your books are ready, you give those books to your auditor. There are standards which those auditors are held by. Okay? Okay. However, when it comes to fraud, auditors are not liable for fraud. Because you see, when you're defrauding somebody, you hide information from them. How are they supposed to know what to get from? So that is usually the dilemma of auditors. And auditors have always been very clear, although it's changing now.
Sometimes they collude.
Sometimes they collude.
Yes, that's why we say, look at the big thing in the US. What was
Exxon.
It? Yeah?
Exxon. Accenture.
No, there was that big scan. Yeah?
Enron.
Enron. Enron, the auditors were in it. So what do we do worldwide?
Now,
that's the question.
Typically, what you should do with auditors is, number one, have a good accountant. Number two, have, tried and tested auditors. Number three, you need to change your auditors every so often. Because if you don't rotate your auditors, they become too familiar. They become like employees. So you need to change them every so often. And that's the same thing we say also with directors. It is always good to have a term limit for these people. Because once people become too familiar, you start telling them, just leave this one. This one is under the table. I'll give you something. And it becomes okay because there's too much familiarity. That's why you need to have a fresh eye to come in, say after 3 to 5 years, to check, has this guy been doing the right thing? And they start from the beginning. That's the only way now you can safeguard in terms of quality assurance. Yes. And
when you are a startup,
yes,
do you need to have an accountant, an auditor? What are your advice about that when you are really small?
As a startup, because you're still small, I would insist on an accountant. Okay. I would insist on an accountant. An auditor would come in a bit later. It would be necessary, but for me, what I would say is I would like your books to be in order so that at any one point, if I come to check what is my bank statement saying and compare it with what the bank is saying, it's the same thing. If they're saying cash was received in this month of this amount and I see the deposits that were made, it's the same thing. If it's expenses, I can see the trail. So for me, an accountant would be more important, a good accountant, because I have fired an accountant before. Because I think they thought that I don't understand accounts. So they were not giving me all the information, or they were not doing some things like management accounts they were not giving me. So I kept asking them, how am I supposed to know how my business is performing if you're not giving me this and that? So you need to know, first of all, what you demand from this person and what standards. So as an entrepreneur as well, you need to have some working knowledge of accounts. Go for some course, basic, at least just to understand.
I think he has asked a very difficult question.
It is, yeah.
Because even in organizations, you cannot have the accountant and then the accountant audits himself. You have to separate those two so that you get visibility. It's very difficult when you are small.
Yes, that's why I said for me, I would
yeah.
go with accountant first, and as you grow, then get both. Yes. Yeah. So that's with tax. Now, tax compliance certificate. Any of you have applied for a tender in the recent past? You guys are okay? You don't apply for tenders? You're okay? Sawa, sawa. When you do apply for a tender, in any government or any big institution nowadays, they want the tax compliance certificate. They will require it from you. If you have not paid your taxes or you have any penalties outstanding anywhere, they will not issue you the tax compliance certificate. And this is what I was coming to. So all these things tie up to, at the point of now, you're looking for business, put in your papers, I want your tax compliance certificate. This is also touching on directors nowadays. Because even you as an individual, and you say you're earning income from this and this place, and you're not paying your taxes, they will catch up with you. So KRA is zeroing in on everybody in terms of tax compliance. It's something we can't run away from anymore. Now, NSSF, you pay only 200 shillings. However, I know there's a new act which has been contentious, and they were trying to increase the amount that you pay for pension. So as an employee, an employer, this is an amount you need to pay for your employee, and they also remove 200 shillings from whatever it is they're earning, and you remit it to NSSF. This is your money for pension later. I know the act is in place, but it is contentious, so it's not yet operational, the new act, which will increase this amount to a graduated scale. So what it will do is if you earn between this amount and this amount, this percent. This amount and this amount, this percent. Yeah? So that's going to come, but for now, it's only 200 shillings. Both employer and employee contribute, so 400 shillings, then you go. If you are a business owner, there's a self-employment amount. I think it's 500 shillings. Put that in as well. It will help you one day. You may just remember that money I have in NSSF. NHIF, there's a graduated scale. This one is a must, you must pay it. So by 9th of the next month, you need to have paid and filed your return with NHIF. So those are some of the basic tax liabilities for startups. As you go along, of course, there are other things, and as you go along, of course, you'll have the right experts to give you, but those are the basics: NHIF, NSSF, and your income tax. So whether it's payee, whether it's corporate tax, that has to be paid so that you can get your compliance certificate, then you can apply for tenders and jobs with government. All this youth fund and women fund and everything fund, they will require that. Yeah? Now, what is a tax incentive? So these are incentives designed by a government so that they can encourage people to pay tax and also reduce some of the liabilities on those taxes. Anyone know any examples?
You've seen counties advertising that if you have not paid your rates or something, we'll forgive you everything as long as you pay. Although we haven't covered county taxes, which have become a headache for startups, and each one has their own ways of doing things.
So some of these incentives include reliefs, personal relief. On that pay slip, when you're an employee, if you've ever been an employee, there's something called personal relief. So on your taxes, after your taxes are calculated, there's an amount the government forgives you and says they are going to remove from your tax. It's a standard amount in the year. There are also other things called capital deductions. And this is why I'm telling you, you need to think global. Because some of these things, you'll never see them unless you are an organization of a certain level. Okay? So a capital deduction is part of the allowable expenses. You remember I was talking about allowable expenses? These are some of the things you can remove from so that your profit is smaller and then your tax is smaller. So these are some of the things. These are some of the expenses you're allowed to reduce. So depreciation. You see all those computers in your office, all your furniture, things like that? That depreciation is allowed, is an allowable expense. So there's a rate the government gives on different things. So if it's big machinery like the ones you're hearing drilling behind here, they have higher rates than, say, furniture or computers. Computers, I think, it's usually 33%, furniture is 12%. So, and then those ones are usually much higher, I think 25 or something like that. So some of these things you need to know, because when you're paying taxes, you don't want also to pay too much tax. Some of these things can reduce your taxes so that your profits are little. And you see this is not an actual physical expense. So it will reduce the amount of tax, but it will not necessarily reduce the amount of cash you have, physical cash you have. So these are some of the things we need to think about as we go along. So there are different rates for those different things. Industrial building allowance, if you build a hotel or a factory, there are some allowances, again, you're given. There are rates. If you have, say, agribusiness and you have farm equipment and all that, you also have allowable deductions on some of those equipment. Investment deduction, again, is on buildings, especially industrial, and capital equipment. You see that equipment outside there? There's also shipping for shipping, but I didn't include it here, and mining as well. I didn't include it here. So these are some of the things that can reduce the amount of tax you're paying because you're reducing what profit the taxman is supposed to see. And it's legal. These are legal things you're doing. It's not illegal. There's also export processing. When you're in export processing, so whatever you're doing is for export alone, you are able also to get deductions. You get tax holidays of up to 10 years. You don't pay tax. Then when you start paying the tax, it's at 25%. You remember I told you the local one is 30%. For export, it's 25%. And yet you've not been paying tax. Remember, you've not been paying tax for 10 years. Then now when you start paying, it's at 25%. You see why Indians are all in the EPZs? Yes, this is why. And they're always in this capital intensive type things. They have learned how to play the tax game. And it's not illegal, it's very legal. You just need to know how to avoid tax. Tax avoidance is not illegal. Tax evasion is illegal.
Or watch Trump talking.
Yes. Trump is very good at tax avoiding. It's not illegal, it's very legal. So when you see people going to set up businesses in other countries which are tax friendly, those are the things they are doing. Avoiding to pay, it's very legal. Evading, illegal. Just remember that. Okay, import duty again on projects of specific thresholds. I think the threshold I saw there was $70,000, which is quite high for a startup. But again, you see why some of these things, there are specific people who go straight into them because they know the benefit. They don't pay as much tax as the rest of us doing normal businesses. Then, of course, there are the tax incentives for individuals. So the personal relief I was talking about, which is on your pay slip. There's relief on premium. If you're paying life insurance, there's an amount which you're allowed to remove from your pay slip so that you pay less tax, mortgages and things like that. But it has to be mortgaged from an recognized financial institution. You can't decide you're giving yourself a mortgage and then now deducting. It has to be from either HFCK or a housing company or a bank, so that and you're supposed to be given the receipt. Yeah. So these are some of the ways you need to be creative and play with your taxes. Okay. Then another service, which is very important in this day and age, is IT. And you people are of a particular age, so I can assume that you have a good knowledge of IT. It's very, very important. In my industry, for example, there are advocates who don't know how to type. They always had secretaries, and you also find that in government. They always had secretaries. Other people typed for them. They don't even know how to type an email. In fact, the only thing they do is SMS. So these are some of the things that can give you an edge in some of the industries that you are in. Very important to get the right IT people. As you heard him say, he's my IT person, he does my website. If you go to my website, I always get compliments, not because of me, but because of the services that I paid for to create that kind of, that kind of feel. So these are very important for marketing especially as well. Social media management. There are some companies which have grown their brand on social media alone. So being young entrepreneurs, this is something that should come naturally to you. Yeah? Legal and company secretarial services, very important. Your contracts need to have the right clauses and they have to be properly drafted, because if they're improperly drafted or improperly signed, you have problems. There is really no point of even having it. So your employees need to have clear terms of reference. They need to know what they cannot do, and if they do that thing, they are fired, and it needs to be clear. So that when you need to fire somebody, you're not overthinking it. Clear contracts. showing their responsibilities. Now, your lawyers can help you with licenses, intellectual property, we'll talk about, drafting policies and standard operating procedures, any other legal advisory services. They can help you also with board and shareholder advisory, although that's usually mostly company secretarial. But they can help you, and it's usually, these are things you can outsource. You don't have to employ people. Outsource, agree on a payment term. If you're going to pay 5,000 per month over the year, then know how you can work it out, yeah? They can assist you with banking documentation. If you need new directors in, you're moving around people, all that stuff. If you're restructuring your company, these are services that you need, okay? Human resource, for obvious reasons. I'm not going to overthink that. Policies, you need to have the right policies if you're a growing company. You need to have the right attitude in your company and the right culture. HR can help you with that. Again, this can be outsourced. You do not need to pay for a person in-house and pay them what, and have space and desks. No. Business has moved away from that, okay? They can also help you with managing payroll if it's a much bigger organization. Admin and filing. The reason I put this here is because KRA can come to you 6 years later and tell you where are the payments for this amount. And they do not expect you to say you do not have that paperwork. Because legally, you're expected to keep this documentation for between 7 to 10 years. Did you know that? Your books of accounts have to be in place and available and accessible for at least 7 to 10 years. So if KRA come and you don't have the paperwork, they will guess the amount you are supposed to be paying tax and they will charge you for it. Yes. Yes.
Do they accept digital documents? Can I have all that on somewhere online in a cloud server?
You can have it online, but you must have your paperwork and it must check out.
Oh, so yes. I still need the physical copies.
It would need to check out. Say if you're saying you received this amount of money in a month, your your bank statements should be there to show that. Okay. You get?
Yeah.
So whatever method you're keeping your accounts and whatever in, they must be in a form that can be extracted and given to these people when they need it. And it's real, KRA do that. So you get a very good job with, say, Safaricom. You're so happy. Safaricom just, what KRA does, it goes to Safaricom and asks them, who are your service providers? They say, George. They come to George. The money you received, the millions you received from, where did you account for them? Have you paid taxes on this? So that's how they catch you. They go to the big guys you're all clamoring to supply, they get information from them, and then they come to you. So you need to have your records in place.
There's a big case now in court, Agenda. They're asking for 400 million. 400 million, I would say you can sell me and, and get your money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, because he got contracts from City Council, a number of them. And you know these things people keep saying in the media. Oh, I bought my boyfriend a car of this value. Where did you get that money? See the things people keep putting out in social media, that's how they catch you. So you need to be careful about, because the same people work for KRA are your age mates, so they know how to scout and find this information in social media, in your newspapers, in Pulse, Nairobian. So they will find you. And then they ask you, so this money you are buying this car, where did you get it? Have you paid taxes on that amount? If you don't have records, they just slap you with an amount. They say, what's the value of a Range Rover? Pay tax on that. And they are allowed by the law. So it's not illegal. So if you don't provide proof, then what happens? They get an estimate based on market value. So records are very important, and you need to keep them for at least 7 to 10 years. I think the legal requirement is 7 years, but I always say 7 to 10. Because they may just come on the 7.5 year and say, we are still within the 7 years, and I need this information. So keep your records very immaculately. Got it? Got it. So your returns, any leases, any contracts, Any payments for rates? I know I've worked for companies where we had to keep providing receipts for rates because city council keeps losing documentation. So what they do is that they just keep slapping you with penalties. So you have to prove, indeed I paid, here is my receipt. Without that receipt, you will have to pay. And some of the buildings that we were paying rates for are like Nation Center, IPS. The rates are almost 1 million. So if you have not kept your receipts, you're going to pay another $1 million for that. So this is very important for startups because I know some of you have handbag or briefcase companies. You're always on the move. Just allocate a place in your house where you can keep your filing and keep all this. It may catch up. Okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit about intellectual property. Who has an understanding of what intellectual property is? Or at least give me examples of what it is. No one knows intellectual property? Yes, please. Give an example.
So one example would be whatever the technology is you've developed. So if you have an app that you're developing to try to solve a problem, it's whatever platform you've created that you want to be able to protect and say, that's my idea, and I have proprietary rights over it, or your brand name.
So intellectual property covers anything which is a creation of your mind. So anything you have imagined, made, written, performed, painted, any of that, a technological advance, anything of that sort, that's all intellectual property. Now in Kenya, we divide intellectual property into 3. We have patents, we have copyrights, and we have trademarks. Which are the most common in Kenya? What's this? Where would that fall? Trademark. So what a patent is something that you have developed, and it has to be an invention of some sort. So it's a product or a process. Product or process. So if you, for example, develop a machine that can brew coffee, that is so different from the other machines that you've been seeing. Or if you invent, or for example, in this case, the generic drugs versus the original. Who knows why AIDS medication in the 90s was very expensive? Sorry? Exactly. So if I, as an individual, have done research, have come up with this excellent product, whether it's a process or a product, then I can sell it at whatever value I want, and it can go down. So in the case of the AIDS medication, what happened is it was a private company, not a government, which owned that patent. And for that reason, we had to buy it at commercial value, the dawa. So you remember the 90s, it was very expensive, then suddenly it dropped. There was a time now all the government hospitals had access to it. Because now those are some of the things governments had to negotiate with these companies and tell them, look here, this invention you have is going to save lives. And sometimes a government can come in, when it's a patent that is able to save lives, they can come in and negotiate with the owner. So despite the fact that you can have, you're supposed to, your patents are registered for 25 years before now they can be available for other people to copy, of course at a cost. Then a government can come in and say, okay, we need this. So please give it to us at a cheaper price. That can happen. So in the case of the AIDS medication, that's what happened. Now, when we talk about copyrights, copyright is very broad because it talks about music, it talks about art, it talks about books. There was a recent case where KU, the university, was being accused of photocopying people's books. I read that somewhere. That's illegal, by the way. I want you to listen to this 1 minute sound bite. We are almost done, so in case you had wedding plans. So in that particular case, that's an American copyright issue. Robin Thicke had to pay Marvin Gaye's estate because they said that in that music that he produced in that particular song, because I've put them side by side, he copied his music without permission. And that's the beauty about the US copyright laws are very good. I don't know if that is the same thing that happens in Kenya practically, because I hear a lot of sampling. When you sample people's music, like in that case, he was found to have sampled Marvin Gaye's music without permission. In that case, he had to pay. And that's what happens now with intellectual property. If you copy somebody's item, for example, what the university in KU is doing, taking books belonging to people and photocopying them, they are not supposed to do that. They actually can be sued by the owner of that book and say, look, you're using my material. And you know what, the person who was told why you photocopying the book, they said, but he should be happy, at least we are reading his material. And that, unfortunately, is the attitude of Kenyans towards intellectual property. So what the law says versus what is on the ground, usually they don't necessarily match up. But that doesn't mean that you cannot be sued for it. So if somebody can show that you have copied their material and you have not paid for it, they can put a value to whatever loss they can say that has been incurred, and you will pay for it. So whether it's a patent, whether it's a copyright in the case of music or art or books, you must always attribute, even if you're writing a thesis. I'm sure many of you are university students and you've written papers and theses on different things. You must attribute even a paragraph and say this information was from Professor Ndemo's book, this date, paragraph, this page, this, whatever. You must attribute it to the original author. Okay? There were some questions there.
Question I want to ask is, and I would ask ladies because I usually see in my house a new design. Some lady came up with a new hairstyle. And within a week, you walk in Nakumatt, everybody's wearing it. Could the discoverer sue the rest of the hairdressers?
Has she or he registered that image? If the answer is no,
But so you could find money here and the peak as long as you know that it doesn't belong to somebody.
If it doesn't belong to anybody, it belongs to everybody.
If the money is here.
No. Money
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah.
It's property. Now, what I'm saying is, if you have not registered whatever it is that is your intellectual property, then it belongs to everybody.
Okay.
So I guess if that person went and took a picture and put it out and said, this is my hairstyle and you cannot replicate it and register that look, then probably you can't. But I see very subtle, like when I look at, say, the fashion industry, when a certain style comes out, you see so many people doing the same thing in their different versions. When, say, the smartphones started, it was probably one company that started the smartphones. Then they go to China or Korea, disassemble, figure out the technology, and just redo it and change something small and say that that is now their invention. That is the problem, unfortunately, of intellectual property. It can easily be flouted backdoor.
In Guangzhou, there is a university of copying, and they does copying things from all over the world.
Yes.
Hi, two questions, please. Yeah. First of all, patents are expensive and they take a while to be effected, right? What would you advise startups who, would struggle to get the resources to get a patent, and especially when they're having conversations with other individuals and organizations for different reasons, raising money, getting partnerships. And a lot of these organizations won't sign NDAs. And even if they would draft their NDAs and have you sign them. So, what steps can, startups take to, shield or guard against?
There are only two ways to shield yourself: through contract or by registering your patent.
Yeah, so exactly. So
exactly, that's what I'm saying. There's really no other way. Those are your two options. Either you register it, at least start the registration process, or have contracts which protect you so that whatever information you're sharing with them always belongs to you and they cannot disclose it. It's only purposes for that, for purposes of that discussion.
So however, when it comes to a point of making the decision, if, for example, I don't name names, but like the dominant player in the telecoms market, that is known for not signing NDAs.
And
right?
That's the problem.
Yeah. So when it comes to making that decision and they say they won't sign an NDA, you just end that conversation.
That's the best thing to do. And if you can get somebody to finance your patent registration or copyright registration, because I know, especially for apps, they fall in copyrights. They don't fall in patents. In Kenya, I know in some jurisdictions they may fall in patents, but in Kenya it falls under copyrights. You would have to have that contract signed. That is the only way you're going to protect yourself. And let me give you an example. And this is a case that I have dealt with. Somebody went and registered Little Cabs before Little Cabs registered. Have you noticed that their app is called Little Rides? That's what somebody did. So when you're just having casual conversations with people in the pub after 3 whiskeys, be very careful what you're putting out. Because that person rushed and went and registered it. I think they tried to negotiate with the person, but the person wanted more money than they were willing to give up. So this person has the name, the Little Cab trademark. You already trademarked it, so they couldn't use it. So they had now to look for an alternative, and that's unfortunately what happens. So if somebody beats you to it, that's a problem. So the only way you can protect yourself is through that contract. If you can't protect yourself through that contract and you don't trust these people, get somebody to finance the patent registration or the copyright registration, and copyright registration is not expensive. It's very cheap. Actually, the patent is the most expensive, then trademark, then copyright. So that one, at least try and get that done before you start having conversations with people.
Okay, thanks. Finally.
Because once you've registered it, sorry, let me just finish that thought. Yeah. Once you've registered it, you can always sell it to somebody else. You get? So you don't necessarily have to hold it till death do you part. You can always sell it. If you decide to sell it to somebody else for their use after you've negotiated, but it is in your name, then you have the power. Yes.
So once you've initiated the process, are you protected? Or do you have to wait for it to complete?
Usually, especially with trademarks. Copyrights are pretty fast. Trademarks, once you initiate the process, they cannot give it to anybody else. Once you're in the system, at least, because it takes long. There's a trademark I registered for a client of mine, and I'm still waiting for the registration certificate. So these are government institutions. They take their time with some of these things, but at least once you start with the process, you are protected in that sense. Yeah. Yes, please. There's a lady at the corner.
For the case of patents, there are different stages like WIPO, ARIPO, and KIPI. So if you target in maybe the regional market, is it a must to go to KIPI and spend all that money on KIPI, or you can just go to ARIPO and then kill two birds with one stone?
If you don't start with KIPI, then your patent might be flouted here. So always start with your local person before you build up to the international people. And all these people have conversations. Yes.
And then on the second question is, once you've initiated the KIPI stage, can you also start the ARIPO, or you can just complete the KIPI and then move to ARIPO?
I'm not sure whether you can do it concurrently, but that would probably be a conversation you'd have once you go to their offices. Because most of these things, you just have to go to their offices, sit there, and find out the process. It's not something you go and get over the counter. And I'll show you just the stages which you have to go through.
And then my last question is, upon acquiring a patent, what's the difference between selling your patent and leasing it?
It's just in the terms of the contract. When you sell something, you no longer have control over that thing. Let me give you a very simple example. A house. When you sell a house, that means you can never come back to that house and say whatever you want about that house. It now belongs to person B. If you lease the house, you still have control over it. You get rent from it. So you get an amount of money from it over a period of time that you have agreed with this other party. And once the party wants to leave or you want the party to leave, the house still reverts to you. So that's the difference between leasing and buying. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Two questions. The first is about apps. If I made the apps and it's not really technologically different than the process, the way it works, it's not different. But the mission I use, the mission I used with these apps is really new. Is it sufficient to have a copyright of these apps?
For an app, it's not as difficult because it's a copyright. However, the one that is most difficult to prove is usually the patent.
Okay.
Patent is a different method of doing something.
Okay.
Or a different process. So for example, if you invent something you can't invent a car and say you're now patenting a car. You can only patent the name of the car or whatever, but the way the car works, many other cars have worked in the same way. Unless you're now introducing something very different in the working of the engine. That's how the differentiation of a patent and a copyright versus trademark. So trademark would be the name Mercedes. Patent would be in the engine. You've changed a different way of the way the engine operates. So maybe you've I don't know, petrol heads, maybe an injector or something different, maybe in the consumption or something like that. That would be what you'd be patenting, that process of improving or changing a process. Okay. Trademark would be the name.
Trademark is the name.
Yes, so Mercedes and that one would be the okay. Trademark. There would be no copyrights. Copyrights are usually works of art. Works of art, okay. Basically. So works of art are usually music, art itself, writing, things like that. But in Kenya, computer programs are also included. Let me just go back to that slide. Sorry. And that's why I underlined computer programs. They don't look at them as a new way of doing things. They just look at them as a work of art.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I know in some other jurisdictions, they've been trying to make you be able to patent it. You know, like how Uber came in, Little Ride, as it's now called, just took the same probably technology and replicated and changed the name and put it out there.
Yes. So Uber now is a copyright or a patent?
So Uber is a copyright.
It's a copyright.
Yes. So you can't use the name.
Uber.
You can't use the name Uber, but in terms of how it works,
yeah, you can do the same.
Yeah.
And another question was about when you register the copyright or the patent, and then another register the name, the internet name. You see, I have the idea. I first registered the internet name, so the .com or and another heard about my idea and run and register the copyright.
That's exactly what I told you about what happened to Uber. Yeah. I mean, to Little Cab.
Okay, so is it possible?
There are different processes. So your domain name is not connected to your copyright unless you copyright it.
Okay, it's clear now.
So it's the same way I can have, right now I'm having a case where I have a company which the founding shareholders sold all their shares to these new people. Now the founding shareholder is holding on to the trademarks. They have trademarks because they sell products. He's holding on to those trademarks and refusing to give these people. Yet the trademarks, let's call it ABC, is ABC Limited, and the products are ABC product. He's holding on to them, but thankfully we had contracts, so we are just suing him for it. So that's simpler because you have paperwork. But when you don't have paperwork showing the relationship, you'll have to buy that trademark or copyright from that person. You will have to buy it from them. Yes. So in this case, for what I was telling you about Little Cab and Little Ride situation, these people had already registered the company called Little Cab, but this person went and ran to trademarks and registered the trademark for Little Cab. So when they came now to register their trademark for Little Cab, because they are called Little Cab Limited, for example, I don't know what the company is called, they were not able to register it because somebody else had already registered it. So you have to beat the queue. When you're registering the company and you already have all this set up, rush and put in your application. Then that way no one can. Yeah.
Okay, my question is about.
Yes, yes.
My question is about the copyrights issue.
Yes.
As pertains the government, especially in the movie industry.
Mm.
You see that a lot of people are downloading the movies and then they are replicating them. The same shops, they do nothing but that, yet they are registered by the government.
What Caroline Toko was talking about.
Yes.
If you listen to her clip, she was talking about her video guy who gives her copies of videos, and then some of them are not clear, some of them are clear. That's illegal.
That's illegal. Then
illegal.
why are they registered by the government?
It is illegal, but you see what they're registered as is people who distribute movies. The government assumes that you're going to do legal business. The government never assumes you're going to do illegal business. However, the government also taxes you whether your proceeds are legal or illegal. So they don't care in the part of taxes. But the government always assumes that your business is legal. Now, there's a time back when all these shops were being raided and all their information confiscated. So it is clearly illegal, and there are laws to protect the people who are confiscating this material. But enforcement in Kenya, and that's why I said practically on the ground, when it comes to intellectual property, people just copy things and sell them.
Okay.
Put something on YouTube, somebody will come copy, make a movie, distribute it. The moment a movie comes out, is it Star Wars, people will download it on torrents. Yeah, they download it on torrents, put it on a CD, copy those CDs and sell.
So
what is Star Wars going to do? What is the Star Wars franchise going to do in Kenya? Unless the government has the will. Unless the government has the will to control that, because in South Africa, if you're caught with a bootleg version of anything, they can put you in. Even when you go to their video libraries, it's original whatevers. You know how in Kenya, when you're watching a series, Game of Thrones, it was played yesterday in the US, today morning you've downloaded it on torrents. You will not get that in South Africa. You have to wait for the time when it's now on DVD version. So of course, with IT now, you can bypass going to the video library and using the torrents. But that's why even torrent sites, you notice, you'll be dealing with one torrent site, then shortly it's crashed because they've found them, and now they have to set up another one. So it's just that game, but it's the intellectual property game they're playing there for the people who usually download. So you'll download maybe for 3 months on this site, then it will crash because they have been busted. Yes. Yeah. Yes, you had a question? Government doesn't care where your proceeds come from when it comes to taxation. So you see, like Kabura, when she was talking and saying how she got all this money, the government is just quiet. They're going to ask her to pay taxes. And she will have to pay them.
Actually, what is going on in India now, they did something called demonetization, which means that all the black money, all the money illegally acquired, because they keep most of it under the mattress, they removed, we removed the 500 shilling and 1,000, the denominations people use most to store money. So you must bring them to the bank to get new ones. And when you bring, the tax authorities will say, oops, you've been having this much. Can you pay tax? They don't want to care where you got it from, but pay.
So illegal proceeds are taxable, just for clarity of purpose. So don't think because your business is illegal, you will not be taxed. You will still be taxed, but you'll also be arrested for the illegal things you are doing. So, yeah.
Excuse.
Yes.
Just drawing from Dr. Bitange's case of a stylist who had made maybe a good style, then everybody started copying. Can the stylist still register copyright, or does it come to a point where you can't just register intellectual property anymore because it's disseminated?
Now, it depends on how soon you do your registration, but each of those intellectual properties, if you look, for example, the trademarks, they have a timeline, 10 years. If you don't re-register it, because you have to keep registering. So if 10 years lapse and you have not registered, somebody else can go in and say, okay, I take this up. So you have to keep registering it if it's in use.
Okay, not registering, like the first time you register.
The first time, yes.
The very first time.
That's why I said, if you don't register it immediately, then it belongs to the world.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
if you don't register it immediately and it's known that this is yours, then it belongs to the world. So anyone can use it.
Pharmaceuticals don't renew. They actually don't renew. It just becomes...
Yeah, after 25 years.
Yes, yeah.
But by that 25 years, by the time the 25-year mark has reached, they have made their money. And that's why they used to watch HIV people dying, because they were not willing to sell the drugs at a cheaper rate. Until now, the governments had to come in and get the patents so that they can produce generics. So, process of registration quickly so that we can close. Trademark registration, it must be distinct. So you can't start having something which almost looks like the Mercedes, for example, that symbol of Mercedes. You can't start having something that looks close to that. It must be something which is very distinct. You'll send your drawings to KIPI. KIPI is where you register trademarks. They will have, you'll apply normal process, those are the steps. But they have to, the most important stage is the examination, because they have to look at this and look at any other trademarks, see that they are not similar. If they are similar, it will be rejected. You will be told, get another trademark. Once it's approved, it will have to be advertised. I think they advertise for 3 months, and then after that, your certificate is issued. It is renewed after 10 years. I'll come to you. Let me just go through these slides. Patent, again, you must clearly describe your invention. It must be distinct. And this is now where you get caught with patents. If it's not distinct, then it's not a patent. Yeah? You will have to provide the technical drawings. Once those are all examined and approved, they'll advertise, and again, you'll have your patent registered for at least 25 years. After that, then you can choose not to register, or you can re-register. Now, copyright registration. Pretty simple. It must be of original authorship. So if it's music, if it's art, if it's an app, it must be original. It must be in a tangible format, that digital or otherwise. Then you have to make your application, get your approvals, then you will be issued your certificate. A copyright is valid for up to 50 years. So anytime you want to sample somebody's music, you will have to go to that person or the estate or whomever it is that owns those rights. If you remember in like the Prince case, people were buying the rights to some of his music so that they can either reproduce it or sample it. So these are some of the realities now. Applicable laws: Copyright Act, Trademark Act, Industrial Property Act. Those websites are very useful if you want to do any of those processes, because they outline what you need to do, and you need to just visit the offices, ask as many questions, and proceed. And I think that's the end. You had a question?
My question falls on trademark. I noticed that, for example, these phones that are manufactured from Chinese, these rip-offs, they don't exactly, they ride on the fame of previous products. For example, Nokia. They don't change a lot. For example, the trademark for Nokia, they changed it to Nokla. So what of cases like that? They keep the font and everything else, they just change one wording.
And you see, if Nokia is not complaining, who are you to complain? Because the owner of the trademark is the one who should complain and say, these people are ripping us off. But sometimes you look at the cost benefit. A company like Nokia has already made its money. So whatever knockoffs you're getting from China, which are going to last 1 month, are you going to buy a Nokia? Just if I may ask you, would you buy a Nokia or a Samsung? There's a reason why you will not buy those things, because you know they are knockoffs and the quality is of course substandard. So some of these things are cost benefits. Samsung and Nokia, they already had their market. They already know they have sold and this is what they've made. So they choose, am I going to litigate every other person trying to copy? Is it worth it? So these are some of the things. But they can if they wanted to. Yes, cost benefit at the end of the day because it's a business. Yeah, but they still can sue if they feel that it's too close to what theirs is and it's eating into their market share. They can sue. Yeah.
Please, how about image we found on Google, on internet? Sometimes we don't have the copyright marks on this image. Are we? Is it safe to use them if you don't have this copyright?
If it's not copyrighted, it belongs to the world. Does that answer my question?
So,
because I know when you go to the internet, there are stock images which you are supposed to pay for. Then there are some which do not have anything. They're just images. Okay. So if no one claims them, because you must claim to be able to sue somebody that this is my image, why are you using it without my permission? But if you have not registered it or...
But yeah. I want to differ. If something is not yours, morally, you should say, I can't use it. Yes. I mean, the morals, because if you put that it belongs to the world.
I'm looking at it from a legal standpoint, not from a moral. Yes. So legally, he can use it, and no one is going to come for him. But morally, should he do it? The answer is no.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Legally.
My question was really practically. Practically, an image protected should have the copyright. Okay. And yes, morally, we know that it's not, we should not.
But when it comes to images and content from the internet, I don't see the difference with a book. That if a book is available, it's here, and I can therefore, I don't know, what protects books from copywriting is the fact that they've been published, or what? The copyright mark, yeah.
You see that mark there?
Yeah.
It tells you that the book is copyrighted and you cannot reproduce it, blah, 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 without permission from the owner.
So if a book has been published, but not, is publishing a book copywriting it by default, or there's now this separate process?
These are thoughts that somebody has put into a book.
Yeah.
So this is his property, and this is what he's selling to the world.
Actually,
so every single book published has a separate copyright process.
No.
Like you have to recognize the author. You can't claim it as your own.
Yeah.
So if it's not necessarily copyrighted, you need to state clearly this information or this whatever, this paper or this paragraph was extracted from this person's paper or this date and this date. So you have to give the person, the original author, that recognition in your paper if you're going to use that material.
Okay.
Yes. So you have to cite.
When you cite, but you can, like, there's a book that is coming out next week. It's going to be open on Amazon.
Yeah.
You can read for free. But the moment you begin to quote anything that is in there, you must say, so and so said.
So there's a protection along those lines, or it is just morally I must say, or no, morally I should say, or is there a legal protection that if I just choose to plagiarize?
Intellectually, if you stole, you would diminish yourself.
That's intellectually now.
Yes,
but say in the non-intellectual space where I don't quite care for the intellectual. Yeah. Yeah.
No, look at, is it Ivanka Trump? She pulled just a line from Michelle's speech. Yeah? The whole speech. She, then she is not clever. Yeah. Even Buhari copied Obama's speech. Actually, you are supposed to recognize and say, this point from so and so, this point from so and so.
If I see an image or anything on the internet and I choose that I'm just going to close my eyes and have very thick skin to whatever condemnation is going to come my way, I can legally use it.
Excuse? Okay, so in terms of images, we happen to deal with a lot of images from the internet because we deal with content. What happens is that there are images which photographers distribute online under the Creative Commons license. So if you'd like to use images without paying for them, what is probably accepted is that you will go on Google and search for images under the Creative Commons license. If you Google how to find images under the Creative Commons license, you will find that Google actually has a button for looking for these images, which you can use for free. And they're the same images you'll find on every Wikipedia page. And then secondly, and while you use these images, some photographers provide you these images to use for free for your own, whether it's commercial needs or anything, but you have again to credit it to them that these images are not mine. They're being used under the CCL and they're attributed to this photographer. So there has to be that, there has to be the attribution. And then again, there's this thing called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It's a DMCA, which was passed in the US some time back, and it is to protect intellectual property on the internet. So if you're using images, for example, your website, the prime, I think the prime factor for using websites is that you want to rank for when people say search web designer or product say so-and-so in Kenya price, blah, 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 you get. So when you, search engines that are existing right now, being Google, etc., they all subscribe to this DMCA. So in case you stole images from people, what would happen is that this photographer has the right to file a DMCA notice. So they'll send you a warning and tell you, you either attribute my images or I'll file a DMCA with Google. If you're scrapped off Google, you have no business being online. You get? Exactly.
Can I just give like a practical example? If you think you can't be, you can use images and stuff like that. She just played a clip from two songs. When I edited this video to put it up online on our YouTube channel, YouTube has an algorithm which searches for any copyrighted material and will immediately like flag it and take it down. Whichever, any copyrighted material used these days, it's becoming very sophisticated such that immediately you use it, it will be flagged and taken down, even without even that notice. We'll just find it's down completely. So even without even the moral sort of like, to use it. Just know either way, if it's online, if it's an image, people are developing like image algorithms to search for videos, for music, for distinctive like sounds, it will find it eventually and take it down. Yeah.
So just to follow up on that, they've developed a similar algorithm for Facebook where if you go to a concert and you take a snippet of the concert and try to post it, it recognizes where you are, that you're at a concert venue, who it is, and it just won't allow you to even put it up, which is pretty neat. So we've already established if it's not protected, there's no rights to it, right? But going back to your question, if something is protected, if it's a registered copyright, if it's a registered trademark, if there's protection there, it goes back to what Reba was saying. There's a business concern, right? So if you're somebody who, let's say you don't have deep pockets, you don't have a lot of money, and you're violating somebody's copyright or trademark, the business, if they know about you, which they probably will figure out that you're violating it, again, you may get some sort of a warning, but they'll assess. Are you somebody to go after? Are you worth the time and money it's going to take to have their lawyer draft a letter to send it to you to say, get our stuff off whatever you're using? So there's a business case there. That's A. But you're risking, right, getting a warning letter, and perhaps they could go forward with the litigation. And I'm not sure how it's playing out in Kenya, but in the US, there's a much greater movement within the law firm scene to start going after violators of trademarks and or copyrights, particularly trademarks, for instance, with Amazon, or infringing goods and products that are coming in and where they're being posted. And I don't actually know the likelihood of losing a trademark once it's registered, but there's a lot of hype around if you're not vigilantly protecting your trademark, you risk losing it. So for instance, a lot of companies are now developing anti-counterfeiting schemes to go after violators to say, you're using our trademark and you're not allowed to. Here's your warning, get it off. If you don't, we're going to file a lawsuit against you. Most of them settle immediately, but the idea is they're starting to build up their case to say, we're protecting our mark, so nobody can later come down and say, you haven't adequately protected it, now you lose it.
One question. You agree that some people are getting late to weddings, eh?
My question was more along the lines of images. So for example, there's a professional photographer, I really like the images they use. So I decide to go on their social media, say Facebook or Instagram, and specifically take an image they took, crop it and use it for my own purposes, say for my own website. What about cases like that?
They can sue you.
On what ground? Since they put it on a public place.
Their property. And you see, probably the reason why they're putting it on their website is for advertising purposes of their business. So what are you doing with that image? Are you passing it off as yours?
No, not passing out off as mine.
So what are you saying about that? What are you using that image for?
Say for example, they took images of a resort, and I wanted to create a website saying that I make websites for resorts. So I use that one as an example of the kind of photography that I'd use,
So you're using somebody else's work to make money for your own work.
He's saying his work is taking the picture. That's what you are saying.
For a professional photographer should come after you because it's their image.
Okay.
It's their image. But to make their life better, easier for themselves, they should copyright all their images. So that whomever reproduces it then is able to, to know that this is copyrighted, and if you need to, go to this person and buy it. Yeah.
Okay.
So my question is about when you're a startup and you're bringing in employees. So you have this person who is really good, say, in development, and you want him to work for you, but then the amount of money you're offering isn't enough. He could get maybe triple that in another company. So you decide to give them equity. Now, this equity, you say, what I've seen happens, and I don't understand how it happens and how people come up with it, is that the developer will probably be given, say, 5% equity to accrue over, say, a 5-year period, so that if he decides to leave next month, the equity is rescinded back to the company. So I don't, what I'd like to know is how do you come up with these limits that you say this developer will say take 5% of a 3-year period, full-time commitment to this company over this period of time? How do you come up with these
that's
time
like
limits?
Employee stock ownership plan.
Yeah, employee ownership, yes.
There is an elaborate way, actually.
What I would say, first of all, is that there is no hard and fast rule. Number one, what are the industry standards? So for example, your specific industry would have, it's the same thing maybe with lawyers. Somebody comes in, they're an intern, you're like, oh, this guy is good. You tell him in 5 years, I'll make you partner. But those, now the terms would be very specific to those people. So you might decide, I'm willing to put a pot aside. This amount of shares I'm willing to put aside for employees who show promise. So how you decide to differentiate between which employee and how much time they're putting into the company, that would be up to you as the entrepreneur in that organization. I wouldn't say that there are standardized rules, But once you agree on now the modus operandi and you decide, okay, this is the number of shares, then now you can draft contracts which then reflect those discussions. Yes. So there's no hard and fast rule. It will come down probably to your industry because your industry is different from mine. So I don't know what your industry would be offered versus another person in the industry. I see that a lot happening with salespeople. So they are given commissions, maybe they are given a part of the equity, and then they're also given a salary. So different mixes of how you earn. Yes.
Do you agree that we...
I know we're talking about a lot of copyright, patent, but I guess we're forgetting that a patent is just as good as your ability to defend it. So you may go all the way, but you see somebody violating it, but you don't have the ability to defend. So
Tafuta rungu. Do you agree that we have had a wonderful day, isn't it? Can we do the political thing and tumpigie Reba makofi? Personally, being a teacher myself, I have admired your passion in this. You actually can tell a good teacher, I think you are in a wrong profession. Come to the university because we need people who are so passionate in what they are doing and disseminate that passionately. We thank you for this, and maybe we would come back to you again. As we continue to next year, as I said, we'll focus more on specific areas that we have weaknesses. This is one of the weakest areas with startups. Even when we tell some of you that please have an NDA before you go meeting somebody, and you ask them what happened. Oh, I forgot, but the appointment was so near and whatever and stuff. You can see why you need somebody like Reba to help you. So I want to thank you also for sitting through. Maybe you clap for yourselves. Yeah. People don't like yourselves. Okay. So we would skip December, and would you be there in January? You look like you'll be there. You'll be in January. But always she delegates to somebody. We want to get something really more tangible next year. I know out of these sessions we have had, so many of you go through several iterations. We had a recommendation from Reba on strategy, and the people are beginning to talk about strategy in SMEs and how you can begin to work on it. What we can emphasize from entrepreneurship, some of the things she was saying here, like standard operating procedures, you must put them in your business plan so that everybody reads them and understands those things. So I want to wish you all a wonderful, Merry Christmas. Asante sana.